Hey, what's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke aka Dansgreat here, and what I wanted to do with this video was have a one-stop shop for all of the storyline bosses in Final Fantasy X, where I share with you some tips and tricks and some stats to defeat all of them without too much issue. So before I get into it, I just want to thank P. Birdman for his Ultimate Companion Guide, which has always been very helpful to me, and I'm going to get straight into it. How I would use this video is to use the timestamps for each boss that I have, to go into there to check out the stats, check out the tricks that I have for you, and hopefully as a result you should be able to get past these bosses and get on with your Final Fantasy X life. Because all of us have different levels of experience, different levels of ability, so hopefully this video will help you out. Okay, so I want to dedicate the first part of this to the people out there that are like, I've tried everything, I don't care about strategy anymore, just please, 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 this has become a roadblock for me, I just need to get through it. For you guys, depending on what stage you are at in the game, there are certain things you can do that will pretty much ensure victory regardless of, you know, your skill level or what kind of situation you're in. So let me just list those out before I talk about individual bosses, and then we will get on with that. So what you can do for more early stages is to make sure all of your character overdrives are ready. Make sure all of your characters have all of their overdrives ready and spam them all inside the battle. 2. Make sure all of your Aeons have full overdrives and you're able to spam those in the battle. I mean, those two alone, especially your Aeon overdrives, will be enough to take out most of the bosses in the game anyway. Let's say you're at a later stage in the game and for some reason even that's not enough for you. Well, my advice for that is make sure that you've got Yojimbo, and if you've got Yojimbo, pay him enough money for him to use Zanmato. And Zanmato will get you through every single boss in the game without fail, but you need him to use Zanmato. And finally, if you don't have Yojimbo, that's not an option, but you're still fairly late game, you do have some nice items. Do a little bit of research and find out how Rikku can mix either Quartet of 9 or even better, Trio of Quad 9. If she mixes this, then every single attack you do will do Quad 9 damage. If you throw a Fire Gem, it will do 50,000 damage, and you know that will make every single boss a breeze. So before we even dive into individual bosses, you know, tips and tricks for that kind of stuff, this is just like a simple way to pretty much break every single boss in this game. And if after this kind of stuff you still haven't managed to do it as well, then, I don't know, hit me up with a comment or something, because you're going to need some more specialist attention to get through. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, the rest of what I'm going to talk about is going to be designed for people that are doing like no sphere grids or regular playthroughs and that kind of thing. So this is tips and tricks, some simple stat mechanics that could help you, and little weaknesses and exploitable things in certain enemies that you can use to your advantage to get through. Because of course, I mean, there is no such thing as perfection, and this isn't some kind of perfect ultimate guide that, you know, nothing else can be said on top of what I'm saying here. My only goal here is to provide you guys with information and to give you guys some ideas about how to actually get through these battles. So with that said, let's get on with the first boss battle, because we have a lot to talk about. Right, so the first boss we're going to encounter is a Sinspawn by the name of Amez. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it. And it's one of the easiest bosses in the game, for good reason, because it is the first boss in the game. It's more of a tutorial than anything else. But all you need to know here is that the only attack it has is Demi. And Demi is a percentage-based attack, and it only takes away a percentage of your current HP. So even if you have like 1 HP left, it's going to do 0 damage to you. So there is absolutely no threat from this boss. You can use it to maybe charge your overdrive gauge up a little bit if you really want to do that kind of thing, but there really isn't anything to say about Amez. It's just the first boss, it's a tutorial more than anything else. So I'm going to move swiftly on. So you've made it to Barge Temple, you're feeling all alone, and all of a sudden, Click appears. Click has 1500 HP. He's not too much of a threat at all because he's still very, very early on in the story, but the first 750 damage of this, so the first half of his HP, you're going to have to deal with it yourself. So you're not going to have anyone to help you out, so it's going to be you and Click trading blows. You're going to heal as needed, nothing too special here. And once Click falls below half HP, then we're going to have our mysterious friend come and join us, and lucky for us, she can throw grenades, and grenades are going to be more than enough to overpower Click. If you really want to save your grenades, you can just not use them. You'll have to heal a little bit more, but it's not a big deal. So Click is defeated very easily with the use of grenades. Things start to get a little bit more interesting after that. The next boss after that is Tross with his 2200 HP. Again, easy, but if you want to help yourself out here, you can steal some grenades beforehand. So have a little stock of grenades before you go in, and that's always going to be helpful. After Tross takes 350 HP damage, he kind of runs away so that he can prepare his little Nautilus Charge attack. Now, Nautilus Charge is a fairly powerful attack considering the stage of the game that you're at, so it's best to kind of shield for that one or use a standby, whichever one you prefer. I think shielding might actually be better because I think it's going to do like less damage than you would have healed as a result of standing by. So I think shielding is good. Once Pincer Attack becomes available, use Pincer Attack, because once you do that, then Nautilus Charge will stop. It won't be able to kind of come around the back and hit you with that. So yeah, grenades from Riku and using Pincer Attack will make Tross very much a simple task. Another option here, if you've been hanging around a little bit and Riku happens to have a full overdrive, you can just mix 2 grenades together for an easy overkill, if you'd like to do that as well. So after all of the story events in Besaid, we hop on a boat and head towards Kilika, and just as luck would have it, Sin appears in the middle of the sea and we have to have a little bit of a boss fight against it. So this one is interesting because it's an opportunity for you to gather lots of experience points if you so choose. So what we have here are 3 Sin spawns, or Sin scales or whatever. They're in front of you, and you have Sin in the background, or Sin's fin in the background, just kind of doing its thing, going back and forth. So Sin's fin is not actually going to do any damage to you, it's only the Sin scales that are going to hurt you. But what you can do is have Tidus, Wakka and Kimahri on the front line, give them cheer 5 times. Once you do that, you can take out the Sin scales in 1 turn, and you can kill them indefinitely. So if you'd really like to, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's needed very much, but if that's what you want to do, you want to spend half an hour just killing these guys, then that's fair play. But that's an opportunity for this boss battle. But as for the boss itself, for Sin's fin, obviously it's a long distance one, so only Wakka's Ball, Lulu's Magic and Kimahri's Lancet can reach it, aside from summons, so those 3 are your best bet. If you want to, you can leave 1 Sin scale so that it's not going to do too much damage to you while you're kind of trying to kill the fin. And if you really want to get that overkill and you just want to do things quickly, Valefor's Energy Blast is going to make short work of Sin's fin. If you're playing a low-level game, or you're playing a no-sphere game, that kind of thing, make sure that Tidus and Wakka don't have very low HP, because you're going to head straight into the next battle, which is another Sin spawn called Uchills, I don't know how you pronounce it. Here, what you need to make sure is that you make use of your Cheer and Dark Attack. So Cheer is going to minimize the damage from the Sin scales and maximize your damage output, and Dark Attack is going to stop Drain Touch from working. Every 3 turns you're going to get Blender, which is always going to hit, so Darkness is not going to stop Blender from hitting, but you pretty much should be okay because it's only got 2000 HP, and you've got Cheer, you've got Dark Attack for the other attacks, etc. So Sin spawn Uchills should not be a problem.
Company halt!
The fiend before us is Ochu, Lord of the Wood.
Not too soon after this boss battle, you're strolling through Kilika Woods and Lulu tells you that there's a big bad Lord of the Woods called Ochu that you need to defeat. So even though this is an optional battle, I would definitely recommend that you get involved with this one and take out Ochu when you have the chance. So what I'd do before even starting this battle, I would have a save just before it, because there is a save sphere very close by. Make sure you have a save there and come in with some antidotes as well, because you are going to get hit with poison quite frequently in this battle. Lord Ochu has 4,649 HP, so that's pretty significant. That's not to be scoffed at. That's pretty good. So how are we going to take away this 4,649? Well, you should know the drill by now. It's going to be Cheer to increase the damage output from our physical attackers, and we're going to make use of Lulu's spell casting, because fire again is a 1.5, and that should be doing some pretty nice damage at this stage. So main damage output is going to be that, but in terms of defense, you're going to need to make sure that you have antidotes at the ready, and you have Yuna's Asuna ability to get rid of that nasty poison from Poison Claw. Outside of Poison Claw, it has a water attack which it will use quite frequently, because from its attack pattern, I think it's about 2 out of 5 turns in this attack pattern, will be water based. So you've got to watch out for that water spell. It does a fairly decent amount of damage. If it's causing you problems, then I'd recommend having Yuna use Null Tide to shield you from that. So once you protect yourself from the water and you're well guarded against Poison Claw because you've got antidotes and you're using cheer and you're healing yourself, then all you need to do is be careful for when it falls asleep. And this is a problem for us because it's going to go into regen mode, and when it's under regen it will gain back HP very quickly, likely so quickly that you're not going to be able to do too much more damage to it while it's asleep. So what I would do here is not let it sleep for too long. As soon as it goes into sleep, I would just hit it straight away and wake it back up. So when you do wake it back up, it's going to hit you with Earthquake. Earthquake is a percentage based one again, so it's not going to kill you outright, but just make sure that your HP is not super low, because then the attack afterwards will start killing people. So just be a little bit careful of Earthquake, but it shouldn't be a showstopper for you. You should be okay with it. Now once you get near the end, one thing to note is that if you do manage to overkill this guy, you give yourself a chance of getting 2 HP spheres. Now plus 600 HP at such an early stage in the game is very, very nice, so that's why I recommended saving beforehand. If you have a save beforehand and you don't, you get an MP sphere instead of a HP sphere, you can always reload and try again. So in order to get this 800 damage that's needed for this overkill, having cheer casted 5 times and using an overdrive, a physical overdrive like Kimahri Seed Cannon could be useful, and that should be enough to get you that 800 damage overkill that you need to get your hands on those juicy HP spheres.
Ready?
Hey!
Okay, so having participated in the shittiest foot race of all time, you find yourself facing yet another Sin Spawn. This one is called Gano, or Gnaux. It's probably Gano, it seems French, doesn't it? This guy is, he has 3 parts, so 2 of them are on either side and they absorb magical attacks aimed at the main body. So obviously what we should probably do is take out those tentacles ASAP. So Lulu's magic at this early stage in the game is very useful, so use her magic along with, you know, Tidus, Wakka, Kimahri, whoever you want to use, and take out those tentacles first. And once you take out the tentacles and you do, I think, 500 or 600 damage to the main body, the shell will open up. And once the shell opens up, it's going to have an attack pattern. So it's going to use Venom, which has a 100% chance of poisoning you, so you might need to have a few antidotes ready, but it's not a huge deal. You can use Esuna from Yuna. You can do a bit of that. So it's going to use Venom, it's going to use Water, and then it's going to use an attack called Staccato, which hits everyone, and it's going to rotate between these 3 constantly. So because Staccato hits everyone, just make sure you're not in a situation where everyone is in critical HP at the same time, and there should be no reason to fear this thing. So Lulu should be able to beat it down with her fire spell, and maybe even throw in a few cheers for extra bit of damage, but it's not going to hurt you very much, so you'll be fine. Just as an added note here, if for whatever reason you are struggling, just an extra little bit of provision you can take is to eliminate the damage that it's going to do from its water spell, because water will target the person with the lowest HP. So you can use Yuna's Null Tide, and you can also silence if Wakka has silence attack. That's also an option, but I think outside of all of this, there should be very little that you need to do to defeat this guy. It's only got 3000 HP, and you'll drain that quickly with Lulu firing off a 1.5 times damage.
He won't last. Wakka's always like that.
Ouch!
So we're in Luca, you know, enjoying the Blitz tournament until those sand-blasted grease monkeys, the Al Bhed, kidnap Yuna. And the next boss battle is a Blitzerator. Now this one is unlikely to be one that you're going to even need to pay attention to because you've probably already beaten it, but let's talk about it anyway. Blitzerator has 6000 HP, and obviously the easiest way to defeat this thing is to use the crane. The game is telling you to use this crane to defeat it. Once you cast Thunder on it 3 times, I think, Tidus can use the trigger command, use the crane, and the crane will take so much HP that a Blitzerator will only have 1/16 of its maximum HP left by the end of it. So that will pretty much render the battle finished. But let's say we really want to show the Al Bhed what we're made of, so we're not going to use the crane, we're not going to use their own Machina to win this battle. What can we do to defeat a Blitzerator? Well, it's actually quite difficult. If you don't use the crane, things get a lot more difficult, and it's probably worth a challenge. If you have a save nearby, it's worth trying this boss battle without the crane. So what we need to know here is that there's a 33% chance of it countering your attack with a move that's going to make it very difficult to hit him on the next turn. So what I mean is, if you hit him with a physical attack, he's going to use Blind Ball, so you're going to have Darkness inflicted. If you use Lulu's magic, then he's going to hit you back with an attack that's going to silence Lulu. So there's a 33% chance of this happening, so we have to be careful. If we have any Dark Wards, if we have any Silence Wards, now would be a good time to equip them. Speaking of equipment, some other stuff that could help you would be Lightning Strike weapons. So if Kimahri or Tidus have Lightning Strike weapons, that will definitely make things a lot easier. So keep your Lightning Strike weapons nearby, try to protect yourself as much as you can, use that Cheer, use that Haste, use that Thunder, use Lulu's Overdrive if you have it, because you know, multiple Thunder Strikes are always going to be good for you, and try to do your best to stay alive. So there's not too much more that you can say for this one. You also need to be wary of the fact that his agility increases once when he goes below 2000 HP, and once when he goes below 500 HP. So the first time it goes up from 1, which is terrible, to 16, which is pretty quick, and then it goes up from 16 to 26, which is really good. So this guy really speeds up as you decrease his HP, so that's another thing to be very careful of. So that Blitzball Rush is going to be coming in more and more frequently the lower your HP becomes, so you have to constantly be careful. I guess if you have Reflex, Lulu's evasion is pretty high anyway. Lulu could be spared some of the brunt of Blitzball Rush's 10 hits if she uses Reflex on top of her already very good evasion. So that might be an extra little trick to give you that little bit of an edge against Blitzerator.
They kidnapped Yuna.
Where were her guardians?
Oh.
So from here on out in the story, things are about to change. Why? Because the biggest badass that ever lived has now joined the party. So Auron will be with us for the rest of the story. And this does make a difference because Auron's HP and his ability to be a tank is definitely very, very beneficial. The lower level you are, the more important Auron's high HP becomes for sure. So yes, Auron is now with us, we're in Mi'ihen, and it's Chocobo Eater time. And this is a pretty complicated battle, and indeed a fairly difficult one to get right. So let's talk about this one. What's interesting about this Chocobo Eater battle is that there are 3 different outcomes, so let's list them out. Number 1, you get pushed off the cliff, and if this happens you get absolutely no reward from this battle. It's going to waste of your time. Number 2, you win the battle outright, so you kill Chocobo Eater outright, so you deplete all of that 10,000 HP on your own. And option number 3, you push Chocobo Eater off the cliff. Now this is, I would say, probably the most difficult one to do out of the 3. I can't remember ever doing it myself in a playthrough before, so yeah, it's pretty difficult to do. But what is the advantage of doing this? You get yourself some level 1 key spheres depending on whether you overkilled him or not. So the advantage of doing that is the level 1 key spheres. It's never made a difference to my playthroughs whether I pushed him off or not, but if that's something that you want to go for, then it's definitely an option. So let's talk about the battle itself. This is one battle where I'd say if your main goal is to just beat Chocobo Eater, your Aeon Overdrives could be particularly useful, especially Ifrits, because Ifrits is fire based, and as we know Chocobo Eater is weak to fire, so if you find yourself in a pinch, I definitely think it's a good idea to use Ifrits Overdrive. I mean, I did say it isn't going to be all about spamming Overdrives, but I think this is one battle in which it's definitely an option for those of us that are struggling. I've definitely used Ifrit before. Let's talk about some things that we could do in this battle to make our lives easier, because there are definitely multiple things that we can do here. I would say that some of the main status effects that we can inflict here are going to be slow, so if you have the option of inflicting slow, I would definitely use that, because obviously slowing him down, making his turns come later is always going to be to your advantage, especially if you're able to haste your own characters. You can really work that CTB gauge in your favour with those attacks, with those moves. It's not immune to darkness, so you can use Wakka's Dark Attack, which is going to be very useful to you as well. It's going to take away the sting from some of those punches that it tries to throw your way. It can also be delayed if Tidus has moved that far up his grid. You can delay him, and you can also use Power Break. So now that we have Auron, we have the Power Break option available, and there's plenty of bosses that are not immune to Power Break. So this is going to reduce his damage output, physical damage output, by 50% straight off the bat. So once you apply all of these things, he gets pretty nerfed already, and then it becomes like a straight kind of slug between you and Chocobo Eater to see if you can do that 10,000 damage in time before he pushes you off. So that's the main thing. In terms of attack, obviously once you're hasted, Lulu becomes quite a powerhouse here. I mean, if she has Fire already, then that's going to make your life even easier. I mean, she could probably take the battle by herself if she's got fire, but most of us probably won't have that at this stage. So even fire with some haste and maybe focus if she has it, that could definitely be useful. And I'd bring her in with the full overdrive as well, just so that, again, if you're in a pinch and you need to do that damage, you can always use a Fire Fury to really get that 1000 plus damage in one turn when you need it. So we should talk about the two stages of this battle. One stage is going to be when he's upright, and one stage is when he's going to be on his back. When he's upright, you need to do 1200 damage to knock him down. And the longer he stays upright, the greater the chance that he's going to use that move where he pushes you back. There's some percentages here. I'll share those percentages with you on the screen now. They're too difficult for me to kind of it's too complicated for me to list them now. But basically, we want him standing for as little time as possible, especially when we get really close to pushing him off. So while he's upright, you need that 1200 damage. So Lulu's fire, Auron's piercing weapons, some cheers thrown in, all that kind of stuff is going to be very useful to you. Again, if you're in a pinch, use that Aeon Overdrive. It's definitely going to be enough to knock him over at this stage. Now once he's down on his back, things are very much in your favour because you only need to do 500 more damage to push him back. But if you need to do some healing, you want to do some extra work like maybe some focus, some haste, some cheer, that kind of stuff, while he's on his back he's not going to do anything other than use a blizzard spell. So that could be a good time for you to take a breather and to heal up and do what you need to do. So once you've done that 500 damage, he will be upright again, and again there's a percentage chance of him knocking you straight back, so you need to be very careful. So in general, doing the 10,000 damage is not going to be very difficult if you've done the stuff that I've listed here. You know, you've slowed him down, you've got power break, you know, you've got darkness, Lulu's using them fire spells, people are in haste, you should be able to do that 10k damage pretty easily. If you're struggling, you're going to have Ifrit's overdrive anyway, so doing 10,000 damage is not the problem here. The problem is being able to actually push him off the cliff, and probably the best way to do this is to not get your Aeons involved, because your Aeons probably do too much damage. You're going to actually end up killing him before you push him off the cliff, because that's the kind of a balance that you need to find here. You need to not actually do so much damage that you kill him before you get a chance to push him off. So if your goal is to push him off, it's better to just work with Lulu and her fire spells, and to be able to knock him down as quickly as you can once he gets back up again. So you need to engineer your turns in a way that as soon as he's upright again, you need to fire off that 1200 damage as soon as possible. And if you do that 3 times, I believe, the 4th time you do that, he will be knocked off the cliff and you will get your reward. So it's a little bit of a complicated battle, but at the end of the day, the biggest reward you can get from this is some level 1 key spears, and that's not really going to change your life too much for us for any kind of regular playthrough. So that was Chocobo Eater.
This plan won't work, you know that.
So Operation Mi'ihen has arrived, and after a series of spectacular fails, you find yourself facing off with the rather formidable looking Sinspawn Gui. Now I have to say this is probably the first legit boss battle in my opinion, because Chocobo Eater is quite tough, but at the end of the day you can't really get a game over with Chocobo Eater. Even if you lose, you just get pushed off the cliff, so it's not a big deal. But Sinspawn Gui is a serious customer, and it's definitely worth talking about in terms of boss battles and what you can do to defeat him. Okay, so what we have here is it's a battle of 2 main parts. So on the one hand you've got the head, and on the other hand you've got the core. Now the head has 6,000 HP and the core has 12,000 HP. Whenever I've tackled this boss, the easiest way for me to do it has always been to take out the head first. Why? Well, because the head has some nasty attacks that come with it, and the core is already protected by those 2 arms that make physical attacks very difficult. So either way, the core is going to take quite a long time to defeat. So I would always focus on the head and put that out of commission as quickly as possible. So what I would say here is to make sure that you use Power Break as soon as possible. So again, it's another opportunity for that Power Break to be useful to you, because without Power Break, the punch attack that Sinspawn Gui has will be able to take out most of your characters in one go. So once you use Power Break, they'll knock it back down to size. If you give it some cheer as well, then it should be the case that pretty much every single one of your characters can survive the punch with relative ease. So that would be one way to get foothold in the battle straight away. So I would go with Power Break, and the first port of call is to take out that head. Why do we want to do this? Because it's got that annoying venom attack, which not only gives you poison, but it also slows your character, and that's a really nasty status effect to have at this stage. So how are we going to take out the head? Well, as usual, there's 3 main ways to do it, because it's a long distance one. We've got Kimahri's Lancet, we've got Lulu's spells, and we've got Wakka. So first of all, that is what you need to be doing. Ignore the core with its 12,000 HP, just let it do its thing, just focus on the head, and especially make sure that you get a turn in, make sure you hit the head before it unleashes venom. And you will know because it will say the head's moving suspiciously, and that's a cue for you to make sure you hit the head. So once you learn that side of things, you make sure that you hit the head before it uses venom, then you should pretty much never see venom in this boss battle. So once you've taken away venom, that's already pretty much the most dangerous move it has gone. So that will already make the battle a lot easier for you. So alongside venom, the head also casts thunder, which is another attack that you don't want. I mean, it doesn't do a crap load of damage, but I mean, one less attack is one less attack. So the first phase of this battle will be you doing whatever you need to do to take out that head and the first 6,000 HP there. And with that, it should be okay. I mean, Lulu has very good evasion anyway. If you have reflex available, I don't know if you'd have it at this early stage, but if you do have reflex available, that will pretty much give Lulu almost guaranteed evasion for the main punch attack, which is going to be the attack that kills you most of the time anyway. So Lulu's good evasion plus her spellcasting will make her a very important player for this boss battle. So once we've dealt with the head, all we have to do is take out that 12,000 HP. Now I say all we have to do, 12,000 HP for that stage of the game is a lot. It's going to take you a while to take out, especially because your physical attacks are going to be nerfed by those arms. So what you have to do, I guess, with your physical attackers is to work the arms, so have Auron and Kimahri with their piercing weapons take out the arms, and then they'll be able to land, I don't know, maybe 3-4 hits on the central core before the arms respawn. There's not really anything you can do to make it too much quicker. You can fire off overdrives when you can, so Dragon Fang of course will help to take out those arms. If Kimahri has any multi-hitting overdrives, that will help. If you want to bring in Valefor to take out the arms quickly as well for extra damage, it's always a good idea to do that. So all it's going to be is going to be Lulu. I would definitely keep Lulu on the front line because her spells will be able to penetrate those arms and get straight into the core and do maximum damage, and just have Auron and Kimahri doing their thing as well when possible. Outside of that, there shouldn't be too many threats because all it's going to have left is the punch and Demi, and once it gets below 4,000 HP, it's going to start using Demi even more. And as you guys already know by now, Demi is not an attack that's going to really cause you any trouble. So keep your guys above around 400 HP. As long as you're not below 400 HP, that punch shouldn't be able to take you out. From there, it should be plain sailing, I hope. And once you've defeated the first Sinspawn Gui, the second one, it doesn't even count because you've got Seymour. That battle is pretty much designed to show you how much of a badass Seymour is anyway. If you're really feeling sexy, you can wait until Seymour has a full overdrive so that you can see his secret Requiem overdrive. It's pretty rare, you're not going to get another chance to see it in the game, so if you'd like to, you can wait for that as well. But in terms of kind of strategy and explaining it, there's really no need because that battle is pretty much a foregone conclusion anyway. So yeah, that will wrap up Operation Mi'ihen and Sinspawn Gui.
Rides the Shoopuf? All aboard!
So now you've reached the Moonflow and it's time to ride the Shoopuf. And you know, you're just on the Shoopuf, minding your own business, having a nice little conversation about marking the cities and atonement and all that kind of shit, when Yuna gets kidnapped one more time and you have to fight the Extractor. Now this is a very interesting little boss battle here, and one of the more difficult ones if you're doing a no sphere grid playthrough. It only has 4,000 HP, which doesn't really sound like a lot compared to some of the earlier bosses we were talking about, but we've only got Tidus and Wakka to use. Now if for whatever reason maybe Wakka's not that powerful for you, you know, you haven't really spent much time leveling him up, you could start to struggle a little bit here. So this boss is definitely one that's worth talking about, especially for the no sphere grid people out there. So some things that will definitely help you off the bat will be knowing slow, or having the stunning steel that you would have got from O'aka. So being able to slow the Extractor will make a big difference in this boss battle. So that's one of the main important things that you should be able to do in this battle. So being able to slow the Extractor is definitely going to make a big difference in this battle. The Extractor, like most bosses in this game, has an attack pattern, and it's going to be Aqua Shooter is going to rise up, and it's going to do depth charges. So that is the main pattern. The important thing to know here is once it's risen up, if you can do more than 500 damage, you won't see depth charges. And I think that's the most critical thing here, because if you can't do that 500 damage in time, and you won't get a lot of time, especially if it's not slowed, then you're going to get hit with that depth charge. It's going to hit you pretty hard. You're going to get darkness as well, and it's going to cause you all sorts of problems, because all of your attacks, all of your damage is going to be done physically. So on the one hand, you're trying to heal the HP damage, you're trying to heal the darkness. In that time, you're not doing any extra HP damage, so it's going to hit you with depth charges again, and you can get yourself caught into a nasty loop. So the key here is to do that 500 damage. So not only does slowing it help, having lightning based weapons will help a bunch. So if you have anything with lightning strike on there, you're going to get a 50% damage boost off the bat. If you're good with Wakka's element reels, having a ready overdrive for both of them is definitely something I would recommend. Wakka's going to have element reels, so you might be able to hit him with a lightning strike elemental reel overdrive. That's also another option. And another thing which doesn't get mentioned enough is the provoke attack that Tidus might have at this stage of the game. So if you use provoke, then depth charges also gets cancelled here. So that's something that you should note. But interestingly enough, there's a little mechanic here about this. So if you use provoke, okay, depth charges gets cancelled, but it actually makes the Aqua Shooter attack a little bit more powerful. So it's around 25% more powerful than it was before. So just something to bear in mind. But definitely, if you're struggling and you have the provoke ability, it's worth a shot. It could make the battle a lot easier for you. So yeah, as a summary, slow the extractor if you can, have some lightning based weapons, have some overdrives ready, and just plan out your turns in a way that you can do more than 500 damage after it's risen up and it's preparing depth charges, and you should be okay.
But, Sir Auron...
So Auron's just shown off how much of a badass he is by cutting through a giant tree and taking us into this weird place where apparently there is a liquid that spheres are made of. And this turns into a boss battle against Spheromorph. Now, Spheromorph is, I would say, one of the easiest bosses compared to the stage it is in the game. There's multiple reasons for this. I would say the main reason is because it's susceptible to poison. It only has 12,000 HP anyway, and poison will take away 600 every turn. And in all honesty, you can just kill it with poison damage if you really want to. It's probably the easiest way to deal with it. But yeah, it's susceptible to poison, but it does have high resistance, so you probably need a Poison Fang in order to do it. So Poison Fangs are stealable from the wasps in Macalania, so that's one thing that you can do. But poison is definitely the easiest way forward with this. If Lulu's learnt the bio ability, that's also another way, another surefire way to inflict poison on Spheromorph, and pretty much any boss that has some kind of resistance to poison. As for what to do with this regular attack, I mean, if you want to decipher which element it's using, just sacrifice one person to launch an attack to find out someone that has a non-elemental attack going on. So hit Spheromorph once, find out what element it's using, and then either come in with like a big spell from Lulu, just one big spell, something like that, just to get the max amount of damage you can with one attack. So that's probably an easy way to do some serious damage without having to mess around too much with tons of different elemental switches and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, attackingly it's going to be very easy to do damage to this guy. Defensively it's even easier because his main attack is very weak. I mean, it's only going to do a few hundred HP damage, that's not going to be a problem. Press is a bigger issue, but that's almost like Demi because it only takes away half of your current HP. So the only way you can really die here is if it uses Press, it brings your HP down to like 150 or something like that, and then it hits you with a normal attack afterwards. So provided that you have more than a couple of hundred HP, 200-300 HP, you are not going to be killed by this guy. So very, very easy. Because it's an elemental one, I mean, if you really want that overkill so you can get some extra level 2 key spheres, you can keep attacking it until it gives you the element that you want, and then you can either use an overdrive from Ifrit or Ixion to do that big damage. So depending on whether it's weak to thunder or fire at that stage, maybe one of Riku's powerful mixes will be enough as well, so something like, I don't know, Burning Soul or Electro Bolt or whatever it's going to be. So Spheromorph should not be posing any problems to anyone.
Oh no! Translation? He's gonna use an anti-magic field on us!
Okay, so we're in Lake Macalania and it's time to take on Crawler. Crawler has 16,000 HP. He's a pretty tough one, Machina based, and he's got his little Negator friend that's going to stop all magic and summons. So before we get into this, let's talk about two very simple things. One, you can slow the Crawler, so that would be something I would definitely do because it shouldn't need any explanation, but slowing the Crawler is going to be very helpful. And two, it's obviously weak to thunder, so you can't use spells while the Negator is about, but if you have been doing some stealing with Riku, then now would be a good time to use some of those Electro Marbles and those Lightning Marbles if you have it. If you want to do even more damage, you can use one of those items in conjunction with another in a mix, and you can get a multi-hitting lightning-based overdrive with Riku. So that can do some pretty big damage. So those two are fairly important things straight off the bat. So I guess the main question, especially for newcomers, is should I kill the Negator or not? Now, based on my own personal experiences and based on what I've researched from the enemy's AI, I would say no, don't kill the Negator. So for this battle, just go without. Why? Because it's got an attack called Assault, which is a very powerful physical attack, and it's got an attack called Mana Beam, which is a pretty powerful magic-based attack. So if you don't want to see these two moves, don't take out the Negator, because as soon as you remove the Negator, then we start to move into a countdown. So there's going to be a 3-turn countdown, and on the 4th turn, if the Negator is still not there, then it's going to unleash Mana Beam, and Mana Beam could be a big problem because it hits everyone. Just another quick little thing, if you're in a pinch, if you know that Mana Beam is coming and you need to buy yourself an extra turn or something, he's not immune to delay, so maybe delay attack could also be useful to you in this battle. So you have to be very careful. That could give you a game over if that Mana Beam gets unleashed. So yeah, that's one reason you don't want the Negator, and the second reason you don't want the Negator around is because if you try to attack Crawler while the Negator is not present, there's a 50% chance of it countering with Assault, which is that powerful physical attack that I mentioned. And if you hit him with a lightning-based attack, so if you use like a Thundara from Lulu, or even like an Electro Marble from Riku, then there's a 100% chance of it hitting back with Assault. That's why I would say just go without, but if you really want to get rid of the Negator, then I would probably do it when he's down to a fairly low amount of HP so that you can take him out before Mana Beam gets used. Maybe, I don't know, a good thing to do might be wait until he has a fairly low amount of HP left, get rid of the Negator, summon Ixion and unleash Thor's Hammer on him to get a guaranteed overkill. That might be an option. Just as a final word about this whole Negator thing, if for some reason you've accidentally killed the Negator, so I don't know, maybe you've used one of Riku's mixed overdrives and one of those multiple hits has taken out the Negator, you need to use 4 magic-based attacks in order for it to be released again. So if you do this before Mana Beam comes, then you can avoid it, because Crawler will not use Mana Beam while the Negator is present. So 4 magic turns will mean that it automatically re-releases Negator and you will free yourself from a potential Mana Beam. But yeah, once you've slowed him down, and if you really need to, you can use Protect for its normal Gatling gun attack, but it's a pretty weak attack, you should be okay, it's not going to cause any trouble. So slow him down, lightning based attacks, keep the Negator alive, I think you'll be okay.
I came to stop you.
I see. You came to punish me then.
Okay, so now it's time for one of the most serious storyline bosses that we're going to encounter so far in this game. The Seymour and Anima boss battle in Marcolania Temple. So, this one is made up of multiple stages, which makes it all the more difficult, but all the more interesting as well. So, let's take it from the top here. The first thing that you're going to notice, especially for new players, is that these Guado Guardians that are on either side of Seymour are going to be really flipping annoying. They're going to keep healing him, you know, they're going to keep using things like Shremedy. There's a 16.5% chance of using a Shremedy, and confusion is something that's always oh so dangerous in any kind of boss battle. So these Guado Guardians need to be dispatched immediately before it gets difficult. So how do we deal with the Guado Guardians? Well, there's multiple things that we can do here, lucky for us. The easiest thing to do here is to use a Petrify Grenade and just eliminate them from the battle instantly. If Kimahri knows Stone Breath, that's also another option. He can eliminate them immediately with Stone Breath as well. Then you don't have to deal with the Guado Guardians at all. But let's say that you don't have either of those things available to you for whatever reason. What else can you do? Well, if you have a silence-based attacks, they're not immune to silence, so you can stop them from using magic by doing that. They're not immune to threaten, so Auron's threaten ability can also render them immobile. And to stop them from using Auto Potion, which is what's going to really drive you crazy the first time you start battling against them, just steal from them with Riku and or whoever else knows steal. So it's likely to be Kimahri at this stage if anyone else does know steal. But yeah, once you steal from them, they'll stop using Auto Potion, and then you can rattle away their HP without too much issue. So the first port of call would definitely be to take out these Guado Guardians as soon as possible, because they're going to cause more problems than they fix by being out there on the front line. So let's get rid of those guys first. Right, so now that we've got rid of those, let's talk about some more general things to do with the actual Seymour part of the battle, because he's the one that we're going to have to take out here. So this battle, this Seymour battle is going to be all about elementals. So he's going to hit you with all 4 elements, but lucky for us they're in a particular order, and that could be the difference between life and death in this boss battle. So if I were you, I'd have a save nearby, and I'd play around with customizing different armors, because I'm sure you would have stolen some items that will allow you to customize some elemental protection. Now, the pattern that you need to know is that he will start with casting Blizzard, then Thunder, then Water, then Fire. Now, what I'm about to tell you is a spoiler, but it could be useful for boss strategy, so for the next like 15-20 seconds I would mute it if you don't want to be spoiled at all. But soon you're going to be fighting Seymour again in his Natus form, and when you do that he's going to be hitting you with elements again the first time, and lucky for us this pattern is the same. So if I were you, what I would do is try to customize armors that have protection against 2 elements at a time, so that makes switching a lot easier. So what I used to do is to customize one that has ice and thunder protection, and customize one that had water and fire protection. So whenever I come up against Seymour and his elemental pattern, all I would have to do is have one armor for the Blizzard Thunder, then switch armor and have one for the Water Fire, and it made it a lot easier to keep up with his elemental moves. So if you have the option of customizing, let's say ice proof and lightning proof, then I'd definitely go for that. Or even 2 SOS nulls together, that could also be useful. So yeah, that's a little trick that could help you in the long run as well. And because you know what this pattern is, you will always know what element he's going to hit you with next, and based on that you can either use a null spell from Yuna to nullify against that particular element, or you can switch your armor to have one in preparation for that. So this is one of the main ways that you can really reduce that damage from Seymour's attacks. So obviously things like Shell, this kind of stuff is standard anyway, I shouldn't need to tell you. Obviously if you're in a battle with magic based attacks you're going to want to have Shell, if it's physical based attacks you want to have Protect. I mean, I shouldn't even need to tell you that. But yeah, so elemental protection is something that you have to be very wary of in this boss battle. Make sure that you have some if available. Okay, so now let's talk about how to actually take down Seymour. Lucky for us, he only has 6,000 HP, and we only need to take out 3,000 of it before he pussies out and calls Anima to his aid. So, some stuff that we need to know here. He's susceptible to poison, which, in my opinion, should not have even been a thing in this battle. I mean, he hardly has any HP anyway, and the fact that you can hit him with poison is a bit silly. But he does have resistance, so poison touch is not going to be very effective here. I think it will only give you about a 10% chance of affliction. If you have a poison fang here, it will almost be guaranteed to work, and you'll already do 2,000 of the 3,000 damage you need. So poison fang is pretty broken in this battle. You can use magic break on him, so if Auron has the magic break ability you can use that, and you can also slow him. So these 3 together anyway, and you've already swung things in your favour quite a bit. So in this battle you get the option to talk as well. Do make use of that, because the strength plus 10 makes a fairly big difference, especially for the bit coming up against Anima as well. So do make sure you talk, and taking out 3,000 HP is not going to be difficult at all. So you can use a mixture of Riku's items, you can use physical attacks, you can do whatever the hell you like. It's not a big deal at all. Even with Shell you'll still be able to do some decent damage with him, I think. So the battle gets interesting when Seymour says, "Feel my pain, come Anima." And Anima appears, and she's got 18,000 HP, which is pretty significant. So yes, Anima does look very scary. She does have 18,000 HP, but you don't need to worry too much. Now, what do we do against Anima? Well, she's going to alternate between 2 turns. She's going to either use Pain, or she's going to use Boosts. For Pain, we can't do anything. There's a 99% chance that you're going to get taken out. And yes, I said 99, not 100. The game's mechanics are such that you have like an inherent 1% chance of protecting against a particular status element. So 1% of the time Pain will not actually kill your character, which is pretty cool, but you're unlikely to ever see it. But yeah, when she uses Pain, there's nothing you can do. Just recover your character and cast Haste again if necessary, or whatever buffs that you want. Don't waste too much time on the buffs, just because we want to do damage as quickly as possible. But yeah, when it's Pain, recover from it. And when it's a boost turn, that is when you want to hit with the big attacks. If you have any overdrive saved up, if you have any big items from Riku, like maybe a Poison Fang, or even stuff like Arctic Winds, they'll do 1,500 damage. So you can hit her with the big damage when she's in boost mode. Tidus will say summon Shiva, the new Aeon, Shiva is likely to hit for around quad 9 damage, so that's guaranteed to take away pretty much at least half of Animus HP. So I definitely use Shiva if you need to. And yeah, other than that, I mean, with Shiva, with the damage that you're able to do when she's in boost mode, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to take out 18,000 HP. It should be okay. If you get any extra turns, I would definitely use Steel to steal some Sinus Grenades, because you can steal them 3 at a time from Anima. And Sinus Grenades aren't that easy to come by at that stage of the game, so those Sinus Grenades could definitely be helpful. I'd steal them if I could. Last thing to say, let's say for whatever reason you're struggling, you're in trouble, Anima has a full overdrive gauge and you know that Oblivion is coming. What can you do? Well, the best bet would probably be to summon an Aeon Shield, just to be safe. So if you have the opportunity to summon with Yuna, just summon an Aeon to take the Oblivion hit for you, and then just start again. You should be fine. So Phase 2 for Seymour is going to be very much the same as Phase 1. You know the pattern of attacks already. If anything, make sure that you've noted down the final elemental that he used before calling Anima, because he's going to continue from that same one next time. Yeah, just make sure you've got those nulls and those armors at the ready. Poison him and just unleash all hell. You should be absolutely fine. He's only got 6,000 HP. It's not going to be that bad. You're going to be doing like a good 1,000, 1,500, something like that with Tidus anyway. He's not going to last very long. So as long as you're protected against the elements that he's hitting you with, he has very, very little chance of taking out the entire party. So yeah, with that, you should be able to win your first encounter against Seymour and be on your way.
You did this?
Run!
So you're now on the run from the Guado because you've kind of just killed their leader, and you make your way to the lake ice and you find yourself facing off against a Bigfoot looking motherfucker by the name of Wendigo, or as I like to call him, Wendy. So Wendy has 2 Guado Guardians on either side of him, same as Seymour. These guys have less HP than the Seymour ones, and they don't have a Shremedy attack, so you know, they're even easier than Seymour's ones. Same deal, if you can petrify them, petrify them. If not, steal from them and then beat them down so they can't heal themselves again. So the Guado Guardians should be a walk in the park. Wendy is one of the biggest pushovers in the entire game. I have no idea why they've made his mechanics this way, but there's 3 things that he's vulnerable to. One is sleep, which is absolutely criminal for a boss battle. I mean, how can a boss not be immune to sleep? That's ridiculous, but you know, hopefully you've stolen some sleeping grenades. Put him to sleep and then just, you know, spam him with magic and with Riku's items, and you should get rid of that 18,000 HP in no time. Let's say for whatever reason you can't put him to sleep, you can afflict him with darkness, which is useful, and you can also hit him with power break so that his most powerful attacks are going to get cut in half for damage. So this guy has no attacks that hit all characters, so worst comes to worst, even if he's overpowering you with those punches, he can't kill more than one of your characters at a time. So there's absolutely no reason why you should be struggling with this guy. I guess for some challenge runs, if you really want to have something like SOS Haste, it's worth having a save nearby and farming this guy, but even then there's a pretty low chance of it appearing. So Wendy is pretty much just, you know, a useless boss in all areas. And if you're struggling on this guy, you should be ashamed of yourself. So let's move on.
We gotta pay? If we lose, you'll die too, buddy.
I have faith in your victory.
So we've arrived in Bevelle to crash the party, but the red carpet has teeth. And we moved from one of the easiest boss battles to one of the more difficult ones in the shape of Evrae. Evrae has 32,000 HP, and she's been known to stop more than one playthrough from progressing for quite some time. So how are we going to get past Evrae? This is going to be another battle that's split into 2 phases, the first part being the non-haste phase and the second half being the haste phase. So let's start with the much easier non-haste phase first. So as usual, let's take a look at the kind of things that we can inflict Evrae with to make our lives easier. Number 1 easiest thing is going to be darkness, and we should have a fair few smoke bombs by now because we would have likely have stolen quite a few out in Beaconell. So make sure you throw those smoke bombs because that will take away the normal attack that it does, and that will make life a lot easier, make it much easier for us to survive. So straight away we're in there with darkness. We can also slow Evrae. So for the first part of the battle, the non-haste part, slow is very useful to have because it's going to allow us to heal a lot more easily, we're going to be able to do damage more easily, we're going to be able to cast buffs a lot more easily, that sort of thing. So make sure you slow it if possible. You can also power break, which is something I definitely recommend doing because, you know, Swooping Scythe is fairly powerful, and so is its normal attack, so if for whatever reason Darkness wears off, or you get hit with Swooping Scythe, which is not affected by Darkness, then Power Break is going to be useful for you. It's also susceptible to Mental Break, so if you want to use Lulu's magic to do some extra damage, you can definitely hit it with some Mental Break. But it's strong against the 4 elements, so I'm not sure how useful Mental Break is going to be. So those are the main things, first off, that we can do to make life easier for ourselves. Again, I'm not counting positive statuses that we can have, like haste, protect, all that kind of stuff, because that should be a given anyway. So once the battle actually gets underway, Evrae has an attack pattern, much like all the other bosses. The attack pattern is very simple. It is attack, attack, inhale, poison breath, and back to the beginning. So you're going to be seeing poison breath once every 4 turns. Now, because it's going to be afflicted with darkness, the main attacks are not going to be a problem. But what is going to be a problem is that poison breath attack, because it can do about 1,500 damage, and there's a 100% chance of it hitting you with poison. So if you want to lower that chance, you need to have a poison ward equipped in order to bring it down to 50%. So poison breath is the main problem in this battle. What are we going to be able to do to avoid it? Well, first of all, I would recommend having Shell on everyone, because if you have Shell on everyone, that's going to halve the damage straight away. And that's going to bring it down to below 1,000, which, especially if you're not doing a no speed grid game, that's going to be much more manageable than it would have been before. So Shell is one of the main ways to reduce the damage from poison breath. 2, for the first half of the battle, it might be wise to see if you can synchronize your turns with Cid, to see if you can move the airship away before poison breath hits, because then you'll be out of range and it won't be able to hit you. And number 3, I would advise, if Riku's in any kind of danger of being killed from this attack, so if she's got fairly low HP, then I would remove her from the front line when Poison Breath's about to be used, and I would bring her back in the first turn afterwards, and I would heal with Al Bhed Potions, because Al Bhed Potions are going to almost heal 1 for 1 with Poison Breath. If you have Shell, it will heal more than 1 for 1, and it will also get rid of poison, so you'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you're not using the Al Bhed Potions, or you haven't picked up very many from Beacon, then you're going to waste extra turns trying to get rid of the poison effect from everyone. So Riku is going to be your main source of healing in this battle, and especially those Al Bhed Potions are going to be extremely useful. Aside from this, for the first phase, the only other thing you're going to have to remember is that there's a Stone Gaze attack that it's going to do. This gives you 100% chance of petrification, so you need to be careful of this. How does that work? It has a counter system. If it reaches 6, it will use Stone Gaze. So if you hit it with a strength-based attack, that will be a +2. And if you hit it with a magic-based attack, that will be a +1. So smoke bombs are not going to trigger this, but physical attacks and magic attacks will. And once you're hit with Stone Gaze, someone's going to be petrified. All you need to do is, again, use an Al Bhed Potion if you want to, or obviously a soft. So Stone Gaze, because it only hits 1 character at a time, and it's not going to be hitting you very often, it's not really going to change too many things for you. So Stone Gaze isn't something I'd be too worried about right now. But what I would be worried about is when it drops down to below 10,667 HP, because it's going to counter with haste. And once it's in haste mode, there is very little you can do to remove it from haste. I think maybe, I don't think there's any way you can cast Reflect on it right now. I don't think anyone would have learned Reflect by now. So if you could have casted Reflect on it, then maybe that would have been a possibility. But in the very large majority of cases, Evrae will be in haste one way or another, and you'll have to deal with it for the rest of the battle. So now that you're in the haste phase, everything is going to start happening a lot faster, because haste is obviously going to make Evrae's turns come a lot more quicker. But if you've already made those preparations that I've talked about earlier, even with this sped up version, you shouldn't be in any kind of serious trouble here, because the biggest attack it's going to have for you is going to be Poison Breath. That's going to do below 1,000 damage because you would have Shell, and you're going to be pretty safe regardless. I wouldn't advise pulling the airship back at this stage, because when you do, when it's at far range, it's going to counter attack with Swooping Scythe, and it's going to bring itself close again. So you're not going to be able to stay like long distance, and you're not going to be able to stay far enough away to stop Poison Breath from hitting. So once the haste phase is there, you're pretty much going to have to slug it out at close range. That is the best way to do it. So once the haste phase comes, I would have saved up any kind of overdrives that I can. I mean, if you're struggling, if Poison Breath's really starting to do too much damage, then have those overdrives at the ready. Even things like Kimahri's self-destruct, if you're in a pinch, they can get you out of trouble, because at this stage self-destruct will do a fair bit of damage. Any kind of other overdrives you have, they will all be useful. But I'm pretty certain that if it's under darkness and it has power break on it as well, you should be pretty safe, provided that you're healing with those Al Bhed Potions. Just a final quick note, we've got Cid here with his guided missiles. They do about 2,500 damage each, but they're mostly going to be useful in the first phase of the battle while you can stay away from it for an extended period of time. In all honesty, for most playthroughs, especially if it's not like Nose Figures or something, it's not going to make a difference. I mean, 2.4k is fairly nice, but if you want to just use a few less items or something like that, then fair play, go ahead and make use of these. But for the main part of the battle, where it really matters when you're in the haste phase, Cid's guided missiles aren't really going to make the difference between life and death, so they're not all that important. But yeah, just to sum up, that darkness and slow for the first part of the battle, the power break for the first part of the battle as well. With these three things going, plus shell for the poison breath, you should hopefully be getting through this battle without too much pain. So now we come to one of the more annoying parts of the game. I decided to include this even though it's not a boss battle, because this is certainly one of the more frustrating parts of the game, and the consequences can be quite dire if you fail here. So of course I'm talking about these encounters that you have to go through in Bevelle in order to make it to Yuna. Now there's no save sphere here, so if you end up screwing something up, then that means you have to fight Evrae again. So we need to make sure that we don't die here. So let's talk about these battles. They're going to be split up into three different kinds. One is when you just have the warrior monks, one is when you have the YKT, and one is when you have the Yat. So the ones with the warrior monks, they're not too big a deal. I mean, the standard warrior monks with their normal guns are not going to do very much damage. The dude with the flamethrower, if you have anyone with fireproof, I would definitely recommend that you make use of your fireproof here, because there's an encounter that has two flamethrower guys and a YKT, and if you get hit with two flamethrowers at once, that's like a good 900 to 1000 damage, and that's not something you want. So I would keep some fire protection at the ready if possible. When you're facing off with the YKTs, one thing you have to remember is not to leave the YKT till last. Now, lucky for us, is weak against fire and water, so Tidus's Brotherhood could come in useful here, along with Lulu's spell, so like a Waterer or a Firer from Lulu will do a lot of damage here as well. So take those guys out first and then concentrate on the flamethrower guys. Or if you don't have that much fire protection, take out one of the flamethrower guys and then take out the YKT. Because if you don't, it's going to hit you with that thrust kick and it's going to eject you from the battle, so you have to be very careful. Now the only other annoying one here is the Yat 99, the cannon thing. So this guy has two different attacks. One of them is a magic based attack which does a good 1000 damage and it hits everyone. And the second attack is an even more powerful attack, but it only hits one character at once. So I would prefer to get hit by the one that only hits one character here, because the odds of you surviving as a team are a lot higher. So what you need to make sure you do, if you can't kill the warrior monks before it in time, you need to make sure that you attack the Yat in some kind of way. It can be a lancet, it can be a spell, it can be Wakka's Ball, it can be something. But if you don't attack it, it's going to hit you with that multiple attack. So you need to make sure that you hit it with something in order to stop it from using that attack that hits everyone for big damage. So with these little tips, hopefully with fire protection, by hitting the Yat and by not leaving the YKT till last, you should be okay. And I think the YKT can be put under darkness as well, so that's an extra bonus. So with all of that, hopefully you should survive this little section as well and make it to the safe sphere.
No one thrown into the Via Purifico has ever survived.
There's a way to the surface up ahead.
Okay, so having witnessed Yevon's pathetic attempt to keep Yuna and co locked away in the Via Purifico, it's time for Riku and co to take on Evrae Altana. Now this is basically like a dark version of Evrae. Now the main thing that you guys all need to know is that Evrae Altana has like an auto zombie status. And zombie status, for those of you guys that don't know, means that any kind of healing will have the opposite effect on the zombie. So this literally means that even though this thing has like 16,000 and whatever HP, you only need 2 Phoenix Downs to win, because your Phoenix Downs will do quad 9 damage. So this battle is basically 2 Phoenix Downs away from victory. And that is how I'd recommend that you do it, because you've already fought Evrae. There's not that much value in doing it in any... There's no point making it more difficult for yourself on purpose, let's just say. Also, there's the option of going through, like unlocking the gate locks and going through those. I would not recommend that, because then you miss out on an opportunity to get certain weapons that could definitely be useful for you. Because one of them is an evading counter weapon, and it will likely be the first one that you get in your playthrough so far. So I wouldn't unlock any of the gates. I would stick around and I would just use those Phoenix Downs, save your energy, save your items, save your overdrives, and just get through it. But if you must try to win without using the Phoenix Downs, then once again, slow is available to you, darkness is available to you, but use a smoke bomb for that. And try to have some petrification protection. Even a stone ward will be enough. But if you don't have a stone ward, then be ready for at least one of your characters to be ejected from the battle by stone gaze. But outside of that, just as long as it's under darkness, you should be pretty safe, because almost all of its attacks are going to be physical based, and if you can avoid that physical claw attack that it has, the battle's going to be very, very easy for you, because there's no poison breath stun attack here. So whichever way you look at it, every Altana is pretty easy. The hardest thing that could happen is that Riku gets ejected from the battle, and I guess if that happens to you, then if you're feeling like there's any kind of risk, just go for them Phoenix Downs and just finish it off.
Although he was not the man I once knew, Keenock was still my friend, Seymour. You will pay for his death!
So, Auron has just seen his old friend Keenock murdered, and he's in a bit of a rage, and it's time for us to take on Seymour Natus. Seymour Natus is a fairly tough boss, especially for newcomers, and it has 3 different phases, so let's talk about some general stuff first, and then let's move on to the 3 phases. General advice for this boss is that it's susceptible to poison. It has a 50% resistance, so poison touch is not going to do the trick, but if you have a poison fang or you have the bio spell, those will do the job, and poison is going to do a nice chunk of damage every single time. So definitely make use of that poison, especially for newcomers. I would definitely recommend going for that poison and the extra damage that it will bring you. Remember to talk. Again, you've got trigger commands here. The extra bit of talking will give you some noticeable stat boosts, so don't forget to make use of those. And the extra interesting trick here is that if you have Reflect, if you have some kind of Reflect armor here, it would be a very good time to make use of it, because every single move here that Seymour Natus has is magic based, and if your character has some form of auto reflect, then there is no way that it's going to be able to hit you with anything. So yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? So provided that you have reflect, you will be able to shield yourself from all of Seymour's moves. So not all of Morty's moves, but all of Seymour's big magic moves you'll be able to shield yourself from. So reflect is very much broken in this boss battle, but not a lot of people will have it at this stage. But if you do, it will be a massive bonus. Okay, so let's talk about the actual phases themselves. Phase 1 is a multi-elemental phase, and I mentioned back in the first Seymour battle that Seymour will follow exactly the same elemental pattern that he did last time. So that's Blizzard, Thunder, Water and Fire. So if you decide to follow my advice and have armors that have these dual protections, then they will serve you well once again here, because you'll only have to change armor once every 2 turns, and you'll take very little damage from Seymour's attacks. So for this first phase, outside of having elemental protection, there isn't really too much more that you need to know. The only thing to watch out for is the fact that Morty is a little bit quicker than Seymour, so their turns will eventually go out of sync. So let's say Seymour will do Thunder, Morty will already be on to the next one, so he'll hit you with like a multi-water spell after that. So if after Seymour's initial spell someone is going to be below like 350 HP, then there's a very good chance that they could die for the next one if their turns are out of sync. So that's something that you do need to be careful of. So keep your HP as high as possible in this stage. This is probably the best time to explain this stuff as well, because Morty can be an annoying little arsehole in this boss battle. Morty has an attack called Desperado, which beyond the damage it does, it will also dispel all of those nice positive status effects that you've bought for yourself. So how do we stop Morty from using Desperado? Unfortunately, the best way is to not have these 2 conditions fulfilled. First, make sure that all 3 of your frontline characters do not have haste at the same time. So if you cast haste on all 3 of your characters, so I'm not talking about SOS haste, I'm talking about using Chocobo Feathers here, or by using Titus's haste ability. If all 3 of them have haste at the same time, then Morty will counter with Desperado and you will have to do it all over again. And that could really put you in trouble, because it will put your turns out of sync and you'll need to heal, but then Seymour will be getting more turns, etc, etc. So I would not have all 3 characters under haste at the same time. So outside of haste, if you use any kind of null spells or shell, it will also affect the Desperado counter. So the maximum amount of buffs you're going to be able to have is 3 at the same time. So you do need to be careful of that. So it's not going to be one of those battles where for every single character you get to have haste, you know, you get to have shell, you get to have Null Tide, Null Blaze, all that kind of stuff at the same time. It won't happen because Morty will keep dispelling that. So you're going to have to make do with the stats that you have. Maybe if for extra safety you want to give someone double HP, like you want to keep Riku in the battle, you want to guarantee that she's going to survive, maybe you can give her double HP just for extra safety if you're finding it difficult. But I would use those 3 buffs very carefully. So one guarantee would be to have Riku hasted. Riku should always have haste. Probably give Riku Shell as well to keep her alive, and use your one other buff to haste one other person, I would say. And outside of that, don't bother buffing anyone else. Just make do with the turns that you have, and just do some extra healing and make use of those customizable armors that you have to protect yourself from the elements that you're going to get hit with. Okay, so after the first 12,000 damage, it's going to move on to phase 2, which is going to be the break phase. It's going to cast Protect on itself, so your physical attacks are going to do half damage. Doesn't apply for overdrives, but for normal physical attacks you'll be doing half damage. This phase is very simple. Seymour will use Break, and Morty will use Shattering Claw. So if Seymour uses Break, and you don't have Petrification Protection, you will be petrified, and Shattering Claw, if it does hit, there's a very good chance you're going to be shattered and ejected from the battle. So things get very dangerous here. You need to be very careful. If you don't have that stone protection, or you don't have Reflect, you have to make sure that Seymour and Morty do not get turns back to back. So you can change weapons, you can use items, you can manipulate the CCB here to make sure they don't get turns back to back, because that's when you run the risk of having someone shattered and removed from the battle. So outside of that, it's normal business as usual. The good thing about this phase is if you can catch that rhythm, like I said, where Seymour and Morty aren't getting back-to-back turns, you're not actually going to be taking very much numerical damage at all. So you won't need to spend much time healing, you'll just be able to go on the offensive and keep battering Seymour with your attacks. Finally, once you get below 12,000 HP, you enter the final phase, which is the Flare phase. Now, Flare is a rank 5 attack, so Seymour is going to have a fair bit of delay after he uses Flare, but Flare is very powerful. If you don't have Shell, it's going to do at least around 2,000 HP, I would say. So Flare is definitely something that you need to be careful of. If Auron is around, I would definitely use him. He's probably going to have high enough HP to survive Flare even without Shell, so keep him around and just heal as needed. So the good thing in this phase is that Morty is not going to be a threat to us anymore. He's just going to be using Cura on Seymour, but because we would have poisoned him beforehand most likely anyway, most of that curing healing is going to be offset by the poison damage. So you have to make sure that you keep wearing him down so that Cura doesn't start to accumulate and his HP doesn't start to go up too much. And on the other hand, you just need to heal as you see fit. Because Flare is quite a slow move and it only takes out one person at a time, it's not that big a deal. So hopefully you should be able to deal with it without too much issue. So just to wrap it all up, Poison is one of the single biggest things that you can do in this battle, along with Reflect. The extra bonus thing about Poison is that if you like the Elemental phase, if let's say you have the right kind of protection, where you're absolutely breezing through the Elemental phase and you're not taking any damage at all, if you don't hit Seymour at all and only rely on Poison damage, you can keep him in whatever phase you want. So let's say you use Poison and you don't damage him again for the entire battle, you can pretty much kill him with just Poison damage for the whole thing. So as long as you don't hit him with a physical hit or a magic attack or something like that, you don't damage him in any other way, Seymour is not going to change to the break phase, and he's not going to change to the flare phase. So Poison has another advantage in that sense as well. So yeah, when you have Poison, along with remembering not to have too many buffs at the same time so you don't see Desperado, and you have some of that elemental protection for the first part of the battle, I think you should all be okay. Just remember to manipulate those turns so you don't get anyone shattered from this battle, because that will be the single biggest loss that you can have in this battle. So just be careful of that. And again, as per usual, you know, near the end of the battle, if you're in a pinch, save up them overdrives, especially after Auron's talked as well. He'll do a lot of damage with something like Shooting Star. So yes, with all of these tips, hopefully you should be able to make short work of Seymour Natus and then enjoy the Tidus and Yuna scene. So a fair few bosses would have come back to back at this stage, but after Seymour Natus you get to have a little bit of time off and enjoy the vast expanse of the Calm Lands. But once you're ready to move on towards Gagazet, you're going to have those Guado Glories interrupting you and releasing Defender X upon you. Now, Defender X is another one which I would say is probably one of the easiest bosses in the game. irrelevantly easy, I would say. It's got 64,000 HP, which is an impressive number, but at this stage you would have already like farmed stuff like fire gems, so you know, fire gems are probably one of the cheapest ways to damage this guy outside of like the regular attacks and that kind of thing. The easiest thing to do against this guy is to provoke him, because once you've provoked him, he only uses Blast Punch against the provoker, and Blast Punch is another one of them special percentage based attacks that only takes away half of your current HP, so you're not going to be in any kind of danger from Blast Punch. So that is like the single easiest way to do it. If you don't want to rely on provoke, then it's very simple. He has an attack pattern. He's got 3 regular attacks that can be evaded with darkness, which you can hit him with. But he's got a Haymaker attack, which is extremely powerful. So whenever Haymaker is coming, I would recommend taking Riku out of the front line, because she tends to be the one that can, you know, patch everyone together and do damage very quickly. So we don't really want her to die, because there's a good chance that everyone other than Auron or maybe Kimahri and Wakka will die. Another thing you can do before Haymaker comes, just defend with everyone. If you've got Protect and you've got Defend, pretty much everyone can survive Haymaker as well. So even Haymaker is not that big a deal unless you're doing like a challenge restricted game or something like that. So yeah, he's got his 3 attacks in Haymaker rotation, and then once he goes down below 16,000 HP, if you've armor broken him as well to get some extra physical damage, because he's an armored character, so you'll likely be using armor break. Once he's under 16,000 HP, he's going to use Mighty Guard, which is going to give him a little bit more defense than normal, but even that is not really going to be enough to make a big difference here. Defender X, he's got no attacks that can hit everyone at the same time. 3 out of his 4 attacks are going to miss anyway, because you would have put him under darkness, so you know it's really not even worth talking about it. Only interesting thing is if you hit him 5 times in a row before he gets to have a move, he will counter with Slowgo, which could be interesting, so do be wary of that. But outside of that, he literally has nothing that could even come close to causing you a game over, I think. I've never had anyone say to me I'm stuck on Defender X before, but you never know, you might be the first. But hopefully with these tips, you should be okay. But if all else fails, just provoke.
Hornless! 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 Hornless!
So Kimahri's finally going to give Biran and Yenke a beatdown, and I'm here to make sure that happens. So Biran and Yenke, very easy, because their stats scale up with yours anyway. So it's not one of these, it's a very interesting battle in the sense that their stats scale up according to Kimahri. So if you have very, very high HP, they would also have very high HP, but if you have no sphere grid stats, they'll have close to no sphere grid stats as well. So based on this, you can understand that it's not going to be that difficult to take them out. Now, there's probably a whole ton of overdrives that you haven't learned yet, especially if it's a first time playthrough. So one of the main things that you'd want to do against these guys is to use Lancet whenever you can, so you can learn a few extra overdrives like White Wind, Mighty Guard, I don't know, Aqua Breath, you know, anything that you haven't already learned. So there's a good 4 or 5 overdrives here for you to learn with Kimahri. The real crux of this battle is that when these two are together, they're on the same side of the screen, then they're going to be kind of shielding for each other, and that's going to make it much more difficult for you to do any damage. So after you use Lancet, that's going to give you a full overdrive, and you should be using up these full overdrives so that you can always get a full overdrive with the next Lancet. So if these two are together, use an overdrive like Aqua Breath or Fire Breath, something like that, hit them both at the same time, and wait until one of them has done Bulldoze and moved over to the other side. Now when they've moved over to the other side, you can go on the attack. I would prefer to take out Yenke first, he has less HP, and you know, it just seems logical to take him out first because Biran's the kind of more dominant one anyway, best to leave him until last. And just focus all of your attacks on Yenke. Heal as needed. If you have a SOS regen armor, that will be useful because most of their attacks hardly do any damage. So even with SOS regen, you can do, I'd say, 80 to 90% of all your healing just with that, so it won't be too big a deal. If you've taught Kimahri use, you can give yourself haste to make your life even easier, but there really isn't that much to say aside from focus your attacks on one of them first, use your overdrives when they're together, hit them both up for damage, and if you want to steal some level 3 key spheres, do that now because they're pretty difficult to come by in this game, so I definitely take advantage of that. And once that's all done, the spoils are yours and Kimahri will reign supreme over Mount Gagazet.
Your hope ends here, and your meaningless existence with it!
So we've just spent all of this time trekking out Mount Gagazet, having to defeat endless enemies, and who do we encounter but good old Seymour. and he's taken out Kimahri's whole tribe, and he seems to think that our resistance is meaningless. So the only verdict is vengeance. So how do we take out Seymour Flux? First things first, Seymour Flux has 70,000 HP, and this is another one of those that I would say is a legitimately tough boss battle. Especially for the first timers, the newcomers out there. It's definitely a hard one. I remember struggling a lot with this one. So if you're having a hard time with Seymour Flux, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. He really is a tough one to defeat. But hopefully with these extra tips you should have a much better chance of getting through. So this is another battle that has phases to it. Let's talk about phase 1 first. While you're heading up the mountain, you'll run into a guy called Once, and from him you'll be able to buy some items, namely something called Holy Water. And this is something that I would definitely spend some money on, because in phase 1 the basic pattern of Seymour Flux is to use Lance of Atrophy, and then Dispel. So this is just for Seymour Flux, not his buddy Morty with him. But Lance of Atrophy will inflict zombie, unless you have some zombie wall protection, which I'd recommend if possible. If you can equip some of that, customize some of that, buy it from Once. It's quite expensive, but if you have the option, definitely will help. But even if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. Just have some Holy Waters as well to be able to protect yourself from it. So in this phase 1, Lance of Atrophy is not going to hit you very hard numerically, unless you're doing a no sphere grid challenge, but the main issue is that if you don't heal the zombie, or if Morty and Seymour get turns back to back, then Morty is going to use full life and is going to take out the zombified person. So that's not something you want, especially if you're working on buffing up your characters. So you want to get some haste, some cheer, some focus, some shell, and all that good stuff. So I would definitely be careful of that kind of stuff. But lucky for us, there's a few tricks we have up our sleeve, and these will help us to stay alive in this battle and bring things under control. The first is the fact that we can poison it. So that's the third time that we've been able to poison Seymour, so I'm hoping that you see the pattern here. We can poison Seymour for continued damage throughout the whole thing, and we can also silence him. So hopefully you would have picked up some silence grenades by this stage. They would be very useful for this battle. Those silence grenades, or maybe you can use it through Riku's mix if you really need to, something like that. But silence will bypass the Dispel attack in phase 1 for Seymour. So like I said, normally it's Lance of Atrophy, Dispel, which would be disastrous for us because that's going to take away all of those nice positive buffs that we'd have. So we don't want Seymour using Dispel. So silence is very, very useful here. So once we've dealt with the Lance of Atrophy, the zombie side of things, the only other thing to be careful of is Morty's attack called Cross Cleave. So it usually uses this after Seymour uses Dispel. Now I guess this would just, if Seymour's unable to use Dispel because of silence, it's just going to replace that turn. So one way or another you are going to be hit with Cross Cleave. Now Cross Cleave is powerful, but if you have Protect, that should very much minimise the chances of you dying. I would still cast Cheer anyway, so spend the early part of this battle really buffing up your characters as much as you can. I would try to give them all the full works. Maybe you can even use like a Mighty G type mix from Riku to get multiple status buffs at once. So the first part of this battle, because he can't really hurt you with too much, I would definitely spend it on making your characters as powerful as possible, while trying to stay away from Dispel and losing your characters through Lance of Atrophy and the full life combo. Okay, so your characters are buffed up. Seymour is silenced, he's taking poison damage on the sly, and he's gone below 52,000 HP. When this happens, he casts Protect on himself, so that's going to lower your damage output slightly, which is unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. But attack-wise, nothing changes. He continues the same way until he drops below 35,000 HP. Now, when this happens, he casts Reflect on himself, but once again, this is where that silence comes in. So if Seymour is silenced, he's not able to do this. So if he can't cast Reflect on himself, he's also not able to cast Flare, which is what he normally would have done. So funnily enough, once he drops below 35,000 HP, if Seymour is silenced, then he's completely ineffective. He has absolutely no moves that he can do to hurt you. So keep an eye on that silence. If it's worn off, make sure that you reapply it immediately if you can. So if you keep him silenced, then that's most of Seymour's threat gone in his second phase. But Morty has other ideas. He's got an attack called Total Annihilation, which totally annihilates stuff. It's very powerful, and it's something that you do need to be careful of. As for how to deal with Total Annihilation, well, the biggest issue here is that you can't actually use Shell. Even though it's a magic based attack, it does not get reduced by Shell, which is a bit of a shame here. So even though in this footage that you're seeing I'm using Shell, it's going to be ineffective for total annihilation. What will be effective is having focus. So if you can use 5 times focus throughout the battle on whichever characters are going to face total annihilation, then that's going to reduce the damage that it does by about 1/3. So at this stage of the game, someone with low magic defense like Auron will take around 2,000 damage from total annihilation, and someone with really good magic defense is probably going to take more around the 1,500 mark. Yuna especially is useful here because she would have talked to Seymour and she'll get a plus 10 magic defense boost, so Yuna might be someone good to have out there. If total annihilation is really causing you like super problems here, you know, you're dying every single time, none of your characters are able to survive it, then it might be a good time to at least have one character that has like a double HP type thing. It might be worth sacrificing a stamina tablet for this battle. But since even someone like Auron, who's weak to magic, only takes about 2,000 damage from this, by this stage of the game, Auron should probably have at least a good 2,500, 3,000 HP. So I'm pretty sure that, especially with those 5 times focuses, you should be fine, provided that you keep your HP nice and high. So that's going to come every 2 or so turns. Every 2 of Morty's turns, it's going to do it after the first time it uses it. So you've got time, you've got poison chipping away at the damage anyway. All you need to do now is to continue using your big moves. You know, if you've got any overdrives and that kind of thing, the sooner you end the battle, the better. But just remember to keep him in silent status, otherwise as soon as he has a turn where he's not silenced, he'll bust out that reflect and he'll start casting flare on you whenever he has the chance, so you need to be careful. But that's pretty much it. So the poison and the silence, they're the only 2 status ailments he's vulnerable to, but they are pretty much the easiest way to kill this guy. I mean, a combination of those 2, poison will likely end up doing good 15-20,000 damage just by itself anyway, and silence will block, dispel, and flare, which is already swinging things massively in your favour. So just make sure that you're strong enough to defend against cross cleave and total annihilation, and there's no reason why all of your characters should be dying in this battle.
It comes!
With Seymour Flux dispatched, it's time to move on to one of the cooler looking bosses in the game, Sanctuary Keeper. Now, Sanctuary Keeper only has 40,000 HP, which is pretty low compared to some of the stuff we've been encountering before, but it has one of the most interesting and intelligent AIs of all of the bosses, in my opinion. So, let's get into it. The most important thing to note about Sanctuary Keeper is that its first turn is always going to be Photon Wings. Now, Photon Wings is a fixed damage attack. It can do up to 1,058 damage. I think it's between like 900 or something and 1,058. So for no Sphere Grid players, this is very, very dangerous. But for regular players, you shouldn't really have any characters below 1,000 HP at this point, so you should be fine. The greater issue is that along with that damage, there's a 25% chance of confusion and a 50% chance of darkness, silence, and sleep. So it hits you with 4 status effects in one attack. In fact, I forgot to add that it actually hits you with a 5th, it hits you with Curse, which stops you from being able to use your overdrives, and that is a 100% hit rate. Now, for us, the most important thing is Sleep and Confuse, because those 2, you know, they render you unable to move. If all of your characters get confused at once, if all of your characters fall asleep at the same time, then things start to get dangerous. So, what I'd recommend is to have some characters out there that aren't going to be too much of a pain if they get confused. So maybe Yuna might be good, Lulu might be good, Riku might be good, and see if you've got any Confused Ward armors. So even Confused Ward will guarantee you not being confused by its attack. If you have Sleep Ward, that's another good thing to have as well. So first things first, you need to make sure that you're protected against its initial attack. I mentioned having Riku before, but another good option might be to make sure that you bring in Riku like with fresh legs without any status ailments. So get through that first attack, swap in Riku, and then start to go on the offensive. So what we can do is use Darkness, Poison, and the 4 breaks. So Power Break and Armor Break, Mental Break, Magic Break, whichever ones you want. It has high resistance to Poison and Darkness, so you're going to need like Poison Fang, Bio, Dark Buster, Smoke Bomb, that kind of stuff. But it's not immune to them, so you can definitely make use of these status ailments. Darkness especially is going to help you here because this guy has an attack pattern and it goes a little something like this. We're going to have Photon Wings first, then it will use its regular attack and hit the person with the highest HP, then it will use its regular attack again, then it will use Mana Breath, then it will take a turn where it heals or buffs, then it will take another turn where it heals or buffs, and then it will return back to Photon Wings. So with Darkness you won't take any damage from those physical attacks, and you will also not take any damage from the counter attack. So it has a counter attack that will that will increase in probability the more it gets hit. So it's a little bit of a complicated one, but you need to hit it at least 3 times, and you have to hit it a maximum of 7 times before it becomes 100% guaranteed to hit you back with it. So yeah, with progressing probability, it will hit you with that tail attack. But once again, if you've got darkness, the counter is going to be rendered useless as well. So I mentioned this smart AI. You might be thinking, so what is this smart AI that you're talking about? Well, these healing and buffing turns that I mentioned, there's quite a few conditions based on what it does. So it has the ability to heal itself, to use stuff like Esuna if you poisoned it. It has the ability to haste itself. It has the ability to use Curaga and that kind of stuff. So one of the best things that we can do for the early part of the battle, when he's got more than 50% of his HP still remaining, is to cast Reflect on it, and or just use Negative Status Ailment. So if he's got poison on that turn, instead of using Curaga and healing himself for a lot of HP, you can only use Esuna, and then you can just poison him again if you wish anyway. Or you can use a Star Curtain, you can give him Reflect, and he's going to foolishly cast the healing spell on himself, and that's going to bounce off onto you guys. So for the first half of the battle, it's rather plain sailing, and his AI is not really as smart as it looks. So that's for the first half. But then for the second half, so when he's got below 20,000 HP, Sanctuary Keeper asks himself a question before these moves, and he says, am I under Reflect status? And if the answer to that is yes, then it will do one of 2 things depending on what your status is. So if any of your 3 characters have Reflect, then it will bounce stuff back off you towards itself, which is pretty ingenious. But if the answer is no, so if none of your guys have Reflect, then it will purposely cast Reflect on one of you guys in order to be able to bounce stuff off itself. So in that sense, it becomes pretty interesting. So if you've slowed it, let's say you've casted Reflect on it and then you slowed it afterwards, so it keeps trying to haste itself again, but it can't do it. Once it drops below half HP, it will suddenly realise that it can bounce haste back off you onto itself. So the same with Protect, the same with Esuna, the same with Curaga. So once it drops below 20,000 HP, it's going to become much smarter in terms of being able to heal itself and buff itself. So that's something that you need to be careful of. So make sure that you don't have any people that are reflected when it's about to do a buffing turn, otherwise it will bounce it back onto itself. So got to watch out for that. But I mean, even then, it's going to have been poisoned. By this stage, I mean, your characters are probably doing 2,000-3,000 damage, not counting overdrives. So 20,000 HP isn't really all that much. I really do wish Sanctuary Keeper had like double the HP, maybe a little bit more. But there's not too much you can do about it. So provided that you poisoned it, provided that it has darkness, and you're keeping track of its Reflect status, there is no reason you should be in any kind of serious trouble here. But just remember that Photon Wings attack. That can kind of change the flow of the battle. So just remember to have some precautions for that. So sleep and confuse protection if possible.
Your eyes, my dear, show me the long road you have traveled.
So we finally made it to the place where our pilgrimage will draw to a close, the Zanarkand ruins, and we're inside the dome. And we're going to face off with Spectral Keeper. Spectral Keeper has 52,000 HP, and he's a bit of an interesting customer, but not too difficult, I would say. Spectral Keeper is not susceptible to very much at all, unlike some of the previous bosses that we've come up against, but he is susceptible to Mental Break. So if you want to do some extra damage with spells, Mental Break is something that will definitely help you. So this guy has a little bit of a pattern as well. It will use its regular Berserk Tail attack until the Glyph Mine counter reaches 4, after which it will use Glyph Mines. So how do you make the Glyph counter go up? It goes up by 1 if you do any kind of HP damage to it, and it also goes up by 1 if it uses an attack against an Aeon. So if you summon, that will also increase the counter as well. So those are the 2 main ways. Once it reaches 4, it's going to hit you with a Glyph Mine. So for me, the biggest deal here was of course the Berserk status that it inflicts with Berserk Tail, and the fact that its counter attack was very powerful. So here's what we can do against both. The first thing that works in our favour is that this Berserk Tail only has a 50% chance of working, so if you have a Berserk Ward, then you can definitely be protected from this very easily. You can pair this up with Provoke, which will mean that Berserk Tail will only hit the person who's provoked Spectral Keeper, so that could save you a little bit of trouble if you've got no one else who has any kind of Berserk protection and it's causing you problems. But his counterattack is still going to be, you know, the standard one. So the best way to avoid his very powerful counterattack is going to be to buff yourself up anyway. I would definitely recommend protecting this boss battle, and cheer as well to really minimise that damage. But also have a triangle formation in which the only person who takes damage will be the one who's actually facing Spectral Keeper and not the other two. And that way you'll have much more control about how much HP you have, who's going to get hit as a result of an attack, and that kind of thing. I mean, if the three of you are standing next to each other and you choose one of them to attack, then all three of you are going to get hit with a counter attack. So patience is key. Move around those pads or whatever the hell they are, and try to engineer situations in which you have a triangle formation and only the person in the middle is delivering the main damage. And if you do that for long enough, you should be fine, because he doesn't really have many dispelling moves or anything like that. And when Glyph Mine appears, provided that you have haste, you should usually have enough turns to navigate your way out of trouble. But it might take a little bit of patience, but I see no reason why Spectral Keeper should cause too many game overs here. Just protect yourself well, make sure you have Berserk Ward where possible, and if you're really having problems with the whole Berserk thing, you can always try to use Provoke to make sure it only ever hits one person.
Now! This is it! Now is the time to choose. Die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow. Now is the time to shape your stories. Your fate is in your hands.
Okay, so it's finally time. I would have put timestamps in the description of this video, but I'm pretty sure that a good percentage of the people that are coming to this video are coming for this next boss. The Liberator herself, Lady Yunalesca. So, let's break it down. Lady Yunalesca has three forms. First form 24,000 HP, second form 48,000 HP, third form 64,000 HP. So before even heading into this battle, one thing that I would definitely recommend is to have lots of holy waters at the ready, and to do a lot of stealing of candles of life from the fallen monks in the Zanakan Dome. The more you steal, the better. Why? Because you can make zombie-proof armors with these, and you can make zombie walled armors with these. So the more zombie protection you have, and the more zombie healing you have, the easier this battle is going to be for you. So especially if you've struggled before with Lady Yunalesca, this is one thing that I would really make sure that I do before even heading into this battle. Something like SOS Haste might also be useful for Rikku. But outside of that, in terms of other buffs, anything that you can get for free that's not going to be dispelled, of course, could be useful. But outside of zombie protection, confusion protection, and maybe sleep protection, there is not too much else that's needed for this battle. It's more about the strategy than it is about the equipment that you have. Let's talk about the first form. She looks very normal here, very unassuming, very non-threatening, but even here she can cause slight problems if you're not careful. Now, her moves are made up of only two. One is what I will call the Dispelling Slap, and the second is Absorb, which takes away 50% of your maximum HP. So up until this point, most of the time you've heard me say it takes away 50% of your current HP. This isn't the case, so if she does Absorb twice in a row on the same character, and that character doesn't heal in between, they will die. So you have to make sure that the person with the highest HP is always healed, because Absorb will always be done on the person with the highest HP at the time. The Dispelling Slap is very weak. Unless you're playing no Sphere Grid, there's almost zero chance of a Dispelling Slap killing you. But Yunalesca's luck is a little higher than normal, so sometimes that Dispelling Slap can go critical, and is something that you should be wary of, especially if you're like below 600 HP-ish. Don't take too many liberties, because she can hit you with a critical and that could take you out, so you've got to watch out. In Form 1 is probably a good time to try and steal some extra stamina tablets. Now, once this Yunalesca boss battle is over, it's going to be a lot easier for you to procure certain items. So if there was ever a battle where you should use certain items if they're going to help you, like stamina tablets might be the kind of thing that you have very few of, you're trying to save them, blah blah. This is one of those battles where I would try to just unleash everything you have in order to win, because you'll be able to get items a lot more easily once this battle is over. So I would steal these stamina tablets, and I would try to make use of them as well, especially for Rikku and Auron and people like that. So when it comes to actually doing damage in the first form, to be honest, it's whoever's got the protection for whatever she's hitting you with. So if Lulu happens to have Silence Ward or Silence Proof, then go ahead and use Lulu's spells. If Auron has Dark Ward or Dark Proof, just use Auron. I mean, you're going to get enough turns where you can just heal people anyway, so there's no real kind of rule here about what you should do. If anything, I just wouldn't waste any of my overdrives or my big attacks or important items here, because you are definitely going to need those later on, so just don't go too crazy when you're in the first form. So you're going to be done with the first form, and suddenly shit's going to get a lot more serious here. she's going to change form and she's going to add something to her repertoire called Hellbiter. So at the start of this Yunalesca section I mentioned to you, try to have as much zombie protection as you can, and the reason is going to be this Hellbiter attack, because there's a 100% chance of inflicting you with zombie. So you can reduce this to 50% by having a zombie ward, or by having zombie proof you can be protected from this completely. So all she's going to do in this form is have one turn where she uses Cura or Regen, and then a turn where she either uses Hellbiter, Cura or Regen. Now the second turn will depend on the number of zombies there are. If nobody's zombified, there's a much higher chance of her using Hellbiter. If all three are zombified, then there's a very low chance of her using Hellbiter. So the important thing here is that she has a 50% chance of countering any attack you do with a Dispelling Slap. Now this Dispelling Slap gets really annoying because it takes away like your haste, your protect, your shell. It doesn't take away regen and stuff because that's one way that she can do damage to zombies, but especially haste is a very annoying buff to lose. So what I ended up doing in future playthroughs, like maybe the first few years that I played this it never came to my mind, but in more recent times I started to pick two characters that I would never use to attack Yunalesca directly, and I would buff these characters up as much as I could and give them both a zombie proof armor and just a regular armor as well, or like a zombie ward armor and a regular armor as well. So one such character could be Yuna, for example. Why I would do this is because I would give them haste, I would give them shell, I would give them protect, maybe even double HP, so these guys would effectively be my tanks, and because they would never attack Yunalesca directly, they would never get a Dispelling Slap. So characters like Riku and maybe Auron or Waka or Tidus or Kimahri, these guys are going to get dispelled repeatedly, so there's not too much you can do about them. But for other characters that you're not really going to be using to attack, it might be cool to keep these guys in haste all the time. So if you're in a pinch, you can swap out, let's say Auron, bring in someone like Yuna who has haste, and she'll be able to get double turns in. So normally Auron would have had a turn, you take him out, bring in Yuna, Yuna can spend one turn healing and then she can swap back out for Auron again. So that kind of tactic could really help you out in this battle. So yes, for Form 2, for that 48,000 HP, if you've done Cheer, that could also help. Cheer and Focus, I think, for such a long battle, in that first form I would definitely do Cheer and Focus as well, because it will lower the damage a little bit from stuff that's going to happen later on, like Mind Blast. It will lower the Hellbiter damage a little bit, and well, you can do a little bit of extra damage with those physical attacks, so why not? So the main key here is just to keep up the pressure with Riku, keep throwing them fire gems or whatever you've got, keep attacking with Auron and those guys, and just not worrying too much about the Dispelling Slaps. Don't worry too much about being in haste or not being in haste. Just take your time and keep chipping away at that HP. If you find that someone's in zombie status and they've also been hit with regen, then dispel that zombie immediately, because zombie plus regen is a really nasty combination. Also, if someone's in zombie and they're on very low HP, so if they're below, I would say 1000 HP, again I would recover them. So when someone gets zombified, it's not the end of the world, but provided that they have a decently high amount of HP. But if they're low HP and they're zombified, or they're zombified and they have regen on them as well, then you need to intervene and use those holy waters to get rid of it. So now, before the third form starts, there's something that you need to make sure that you're ready for. The first attack that you're going to be hit with is called Mega Death, and Mega Death has a 100% chance of inflicting death on everyone. And this is probably the most infamous attack in the entire game, because I'm pretty sure that almost everyone who's played this game has had that happen to them at least once, where, you know, they've cured all of the zombies thinking, yes, I'm so smart, and then suddenly Form 3 came along, you got hit with Mega Death and you got yourself a game over, and you had to watch that scene all over again. So what are we going to do? How are we going to stop this Mega Death from wiping us out on the first turn? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Some of you probably discovered this by accident, some of you guys might have researched it, some of you might be just finding out now. The best way to do it is to have a team full of zombies at the start. So when you deal the final blow in Phase 2, make sure that at the very least 2 out of your frontline 3 are zombies. And if that's the case, then death will not work against zombies, so you'll be freed from the clutches of Mega Death and you can continue on your way and keep chipping away at that damage, because the final form has 64,000, so there's a lot of work to do. So once you've made it past the first Mega Death, the fun is only just beginning, because there's still a lot more to do here. Not only is there still a lot of HP to take out, there's also another attack pattern that you really need to make sure that you're following properly. So if I were you, especially if you're fairly inexperienced with the game, I would make a note of this, because this can literally be the difference between life and death in this third form. So attack 1 is Hellbiter, but bear in mind whenever I say Hellbiter, that can also be accompanied by Curaga and Regen, depending on the number of zombies, but I'll just say Hellbiter to make it easy. It's Hellbiter, Hellbiter, Mind Blast, Hellbiter, and Megadeth. And then this repeats from the beginning and continues onwards in that fashion. So, Hellbiter you already know all about, you know what's going on with that. This time she's got Curaga. Curaga is not something that she uses too often, but when it does get used, it's pretty much going to take out every single character that you have because it's a very powerful attack. It does like maybe 3,000–4,000 damage to a zombie. So this might be a good time to get in those extra characters that I was talking about, those healers that are not going to be zombified because they won't get killed by Curaga, for example. So based on this attack pattern, the critical part here is the gap between Mind Blast and Megadeth. So you're going to get hit with Mind Blast, which has a 50% confusion rate. So if you have any Confused Walled Armors, now is a good time to use it. If you don't have a lot of Confused Walled Armors, make sure you don't have stuff like Evade and Counter equipped. Make sure that you don't have too many physical hard hitters out there. There's a big difference between Auron being confused, or Waka being confused, and Yuna being confused. So do make sure that you're careful of that. But once Mind Blast happens, you have very little time to make sure that you've set up your team of 3 zombies again before Megadeth happens. So Mind Blast has happened, you will have one other turn from Yunalesca before Megadeth comes again. So the whole key here is to make sure that you set up your front line again. At the very least, make sure you always have 2 zombies, otherwise you could start to get overwhelmed after Megadeth. And once you start to get control of this pattern and you start to understand how it works, and you always make sure you have your zombies at the ready, in this gap between Megadeth and Mind Blast, then you will really take control in this boss battle and you should be able to get through without too much issue. The final note to add here is that in this final phase there is a 100% chance of countering with a Dispelling Slap. So once again, for this final form, those 1 or 2 characters that I talked about that you're going to be using as purely healers could come in very helpful. Literally, they just come in and out of the front line to do some healing, to toss a Holy Water, to toss an X Potion, to toss a Mega Potion. Anything that you might need to help you out. So just do bear that in mind. Those guys could really save your life in the final form. So aside from this, all that remains is just to keep up that damage with Riku. Still, if you've got any fire gems left, if you have any other gems left, to use them. If you've done a little bit of monster capturing, you have shining gems, now is a wonderful time to use those shining gems. I would say that Auron is a good person to have attacking here because he does pretty high damage, especially if he's been cheered as well. So keep Auron at it as well. And hopefully before too long, if you're patient and you keep up to date with this attack pattern, you should be able to defeat the mighty Yunalesca and begin the serious business of trying to find a way to defeat Sin without the final summoning.
Now that's what I call a plan!
Okay, so after Yunalesca you most likely would have had a little bit of a breather where you can actually check out Spira, do a little bit of roaming around and enjoy yourself for a bit. But now it's time to get back to business and we're going to take on Sin's fins. So you've got the left fin and then you have the right fin. They're both susceptible to armor break and mental break, so both fins are pretty much identical except for the fact that the right fin is a bit more aggressive when it comes to its negation move. So negation, as its name would suggest, will get rid of all of your positive statuses, so it's not going to be too fun. But the mechanics behind it are rather complicated and probably so complicated that it's not really worth explaining as much, because it doesn't really have many moves outside of its physical ramming attack and Gravija. I don't think it's worth dwelling too hard on this battle because again, it's one of those battles where I've not heard of people being stuck before. So what I would do for this battle, the biggest problem is going to be that ramming attack. It has a slight delay, but it's a physical attack, so you can reduce the damage by about 1/3 by using Cheer 5 times, so that way you won't need to bother casting Protect, and then when negation happens you'll have to recast it, etc, etc. 5 times Cheer should usually be enough for you to get through this, so I might not even bother with Protect. Or just cast it the first time round and after negation is used, don't bother kind of reapplying it if you want to. So yeah, get Cheer going and then just start spamming it with attacks. It's got 65,000 HP, so it's going to take a little while, but with Armor Break and Mental Break and maybe some more powerful items from Riku, you should be able to wear it down without too much issue. As for this Gravija attack, the main thing is that it's going to warn you before it uses Gravija, so that's going to be very good for us. And when it does hit, it's going to be that magic current HP thing again. So it only takes away 75% of your current HP. So while 75% is quite a big number, it means that it's not too difficult to recover from, because, you know, even if you've got 100 HP left before it hits, you're not going to die. It's not a big deal. All you have to do is make sure that after Graveja you've healed yourself again sufficiently, because you don't want to get taken out by the ramming attack afterwards. So aside from that, I mean, there's not really too much to say about Sims Fins. If you really want to get into the nitty gritty of how this negation thing works, then I would direct you to P. Birdman's Ultimate Companion Guide. It has it there in all of its full details, but honestly, knowing that information is not really going to make you more likely to win this battle. It's just extra information, to be honest. So aside from things I've said, so just having cheer and casting maybe the first round of buffs, or maybe just reapplying haste only whenever you need it, that should pretty much be enough to get you through Sims Fins. I wouldn't recommend pulling out too far, because if you go out far it uses the smack attack, and while this doesn't have a delay, it hits a little bit harder. But if you have quite a lot of HP, you know, your HP is quite high, you know, Lulu's damage is pretty good, Wakka's damage is pretty good, then you can take the entire fight from out there too if you wish. So it's totally up to you. I prefer to be close, because that way I can get people like Auron, Tidus and Kimahri fully in on the action as well. So that's just my thoughts. One final little thing that might interest you about this battle is against the left Finn, if you do overkill it, you'll get yourself an extra HP sphere. So if that's something that you're interested in, you will need to overkill it. But you need to do 10,000 damage for that overkill. So your characters are probably going to be unable to do that at this stage unless you've got like a Sunburst mixed with Rika or something. But it's probably going to have to be Bahamut's Overdrive in order to do this. But just bear in mind, if you do want an extra HP sphere, that is one way to do it, and that's by overkilling the left Finn. The battles continue thick and fast, there's no room to save in between, and now we have this like double battle against Sinspawn Gane and Sin's Head. So one has 20,000, one has 36,000. These guys are pretty easy. So let me start with Sinspawn Gane first. This one is susceptible to slow, it's susceptible to power break, it's susceptible to magic break, and it's susceptible to silence. So there's a pretty good set of things that we can hit it with. As for its moves, it looks very much like Sinspawn Gane from Kilika from way earlier on in the game, and much like that one, it also has an attack pattern. The pattern is the Venom attack times 2, so it does Venom, Venom, and then the Thrashing attack, which hits everyone with physical damage. If you use magic against it, it will counter with Waltiger, so that's something you've got to watch out for. Waltiger is pretty powerful, but with magic break, it should hopefully bring it back down to size. But just remember that you have the silence option as well. You can always just silence the sucker and you should be fine. And even as a bonus, if you have a way of inflicting zombie on this thing, you can also inflict zombie and toss a Phoenix down, just like you did for every Altana. So there's a myriad of ways to kill this thing. Honestly, it's very easy. Even when it drops below 10,000 HP and it goes inside its shell, it's not going to make that much of a difference. You should be able to kill it with relative ease. The only thing that could cause a problem is maybe the Venom and the Thrashing attack might be quite powerful, but they're both physical based attacks, so Power Break or Protect will be enough to protect against these. So either way, Sinspawn Gane should not be causing you too many major problems. As for Sin's Head, it's susceptible to Armor Break and to Mental Break as well, and this one uses negation quite frequently. So again, don't get too stuck up on trying to get loads of buffs for yourself, especially after negation's been used once. Otherwise you'll spend too many turns trying to cast buffs and not enough turns actually doing the damage. So yeah, this one has it has an interesting mechanic in terms of countering. It counters with level 1 elemental spells in this particular order. It's Fire, Blizzard, Thunder and Water. As for the chance of it countering, it changes based on how much HP it has left, but as like a ballpark figure, when it has half of its HP left, it has a 50% chance of counter-attacking, and it changes according to how much HP it has left. So that's pretty much all you need to know. So again, this one should be pretty easy. The only reason these battles are of any significance is probably because they're back-to-back, so in case you make any kind of serious mistakes or you've not healed properly before the end of one battle, there's a chance you could get in trouble by this one. But under any kind of normal circumstances, there's no reason why you should be getting game over in this particular battle. So Sin's Head should be pretty easy.
Take us up, flush to the mouth! No mistakes, or I'm gonna tear out that mop you call hair!
Okay, so now it's time for one of my favourite bosses in the game, and this is Overdrive Sin. The reason why this is one of my favourites is it's a whole different kind of challenge from the other bosses. I mean, this one is not really a boss where you have to do lots of different things to try and avoid its attacks and all that kind of stuff. This is just a boss that's like, look mate, I've got 140,000 HP and I'm going to unleash an attack that's going to kill you and give you a game over in X amount of time. can you do this damage before I kill you? It's literally as simple as that. It's like the purest form of boss battle ever. It's a simple race against time to do the damage that you need to do. So 140,000 HP, and the only thing that it's going to do is every 6 times it's targeted, it's going to hit you back with a counter-attack. Now, the counter-attack's damage is going to be irrelevant to you, I mean, unless you're doing a no sphere grid, but even if that's the case, most of the time it should not be a problem. I mean, even for a no sphere grid, you should be able to handle it without issue. But let's just say this is a normal game. The only time it's going to be a problem is if you get hit with one of the status effects. So what I would do is I would probably pick 3 people that have the best damage output, and of these 3 people, give them as much protection against the following status elements as possible: Petrification, Confusion, and Zombie. Maybe not Zombie, I mean Zombie is the least important of these 3, but you definitely need Petrification protection and you need Confusion protection, because the more time you waste trying to cure people from Petrification, and obviously you've got to remember, if you get petrified you lose your haste status as well, unless it's auto haste, and obviously Confusion, that's an extra problem, the less time you have trying to do this 140,000 damage, because considering how highly leveled up you are, how good your items are for Riku, 140,000 is a lot of damage to be done in not that much time. So you need to focus all of your efforts on doing as much damage as possible. So all I can really recommend here is just make sure you have your overdrives charged before you go in. You know, use especially the multi-hitting ones, they're always useful. If you want to use something like Hyper Nuddle to give yourself, like, you know, 5 times cheer effect very quickly without having to waste any more turns, that could also help. If you're really struggling, even stuff like Trio, I know is broken, but you know, if you have no choice, if you're not finding any other way to do this damage, that's also useful. But literally just haste your characters up as quickly as possible and just start bombarding this guy. There is literally no other advice I can give you than to just hit him with everything you've got. And if it's still not working, your Aeons can be used as well, they can come into the mix. So just have as many overdrives as possible at the ready, and you should be able to defeat this guy.
Don't you ever give up?
So just when you thought there couldn't be another Seymour boss battle, we get hit with the Seymour Omnis boss battle. Now this one is a little bit different from the ones before it. He doesn't have a little buddy with him this time, which is kind of nice. But what is he susceptible to? He's only susceptible to armor break and to mental break. So it's not like the previous ones where, you know, you can poison him, you can silence him, and all this kind of stuff. So it's going to play out a little bit differently to what it usually does. So first thing you'll notice is that he has these like wheels around him, and of these wheels, each has 4 different elements attached to it. Now I personally prefer to just work with whatever element is easiest to work with. So let's say I have fire protection, and fire protection is very easy to come by because fire gems are very easy to obtain, so getting like fireproof, fire eater armors is pretty simple. I would probably not touch those wheels around him at all and just focus my attacks on Seymour, because if you don't touch the wheels at all, the only elemental attacks you will ever see is Fire Aga, and if you have fire protection for all of your characters, then basically his main attack is already useless, and aside from that, the only time he can damage you is with his big ultimate attack, which is what we're going to come to. So it's totally your choice. I mean, if you've got, I don't know, elemental protection for all of the elements, then it's not really going to matter to you. If, let's say, you have more thunder protection than you have fire protection, you can manipulate those wheels as you please. But just know that if 3 out of the 4 connections are of the same element, then he'll use a level 3 spell, but if only 1 or 2 of those connections are of the same element, he will use a level 2 spell. But like I said, at this stage, if you've got elemental protection, it's going to be a proof or it's going to be an eater, so, you know, whether it's a level 2 spell or a level 3 spell, it's not really going to matter at this stage. Now, what is going to matter is what's going to happen after you target him 6 or more times. When this happens, Seymour is going to use Dispel, and this is going to dispel everyone's positive statuses, and then he's going to follow that up with Ultima. So, what can we do here? So what can you do in order to protect yourself against this Ultima? Now, this Ultima is quite interesting because having Shell does not reduce the damage from this Ultima, so the only thing you can do at this stage is to use Focus. So that's one of the main ways to reduce the damage from this Ultima. So what I would advise that you do is have someone like Riku hasted, so have 1 or 2 characters hasted, and pay attention to how many times you've hit Seymour, and when you know that Dispel is going to be the next turn, remove Riku from the front line. So he's going to use Dispel, but then you can bring Riku back in and you can recast a few of those buffs before you get hit with Ultima. So that's the main thing you need to remember here. Now, whether or not you're going to be able to survive in this battle is going to hinge on whether or not you can survive the ultimate attack. So if you have at least about 2,500 HP, you should be able to survive Ultima without too much issue. If you're playing with regular stats, I mean, my Lulu, without any grinding, I think I had about 70 magic defense with Lulu. She's one of the best. And with 5 times focus, Ultima did about 1,600 damage. So provided that you have over about 2,200, 2,300 HP and you have 5 times focus, you should be able to survive this ultimate attack. But let's say you're trying everything, let's say you've got a few stamina tablets, you've given some double HP and your characters are so underleveled that Ultima is killing you, then pretty much the only solution you're going to have left is to either just blitz your way through that 80,000 damage and kill Seymour Omnis before he has a chance to use Ultima, or if even that's not working, is to use Hyper Mighty Guard, so use something that has auto life. And the final option, aside from all of that, is to use an Aeon Shield as well to take that ultimate hit. But I mean, with those solutions, plus the fact that his regular attack is only going to be a fire-based one that you're already defended against, Seymour Omnis ends up being easier than, I would say, Seymour Flux and maybe even Seymour Natus when you first meet them. So yeah, once he drops below 20,000 HP, it only takes 3 attacks for him to use Dispel, so you need to pay even more attention here. But the crux of this battle is making sure that Ultima is not powerful enough to kill you. And if it isn't, this battle should be yours. So just remember to switch out whoever's got the haste status before Dispel hits, and then you should have enough turns to recast a few buffs and a few little things, and to do a little bit of healing before Ultimate appears. So Seymour Omnis shouldn't be too much of a big deal. We can breeze past him and make our way towards the final boss battle.
You got tall, but you're all bones. You eating right, boy? You've really grown.
Okay, here we are, my friends. You've gone on this long journey and you finally faced off with Jecht, and he's turned into Braska's final Aeon, and you find yourself facing a formidable boss and you're thinking, how the hell am I supposed to beat this guy? So let's talk about the final serious boss battle in this game, Braska's final Aeon. Okay, so Jecht has 2 forms, and of those 2 forms, the second form is also broken into 2 halves. So this is a battle of 3/3, I would say. So let's go on with the first one, the easiest one. Before even going into this battle, you should definitely have some petrification protection. So before this battle would have started, you would have had access to the airship, you would have had access to monster hunting, you would have had access to pretty much get any item or any equipment that you wanted. So asking for everyone to have petrification protection I don't think is too much of a big ask here. And considering the fact that this guy will be using Jecht Beam throughout the battle, and Jecht Beam has a 100% chance of petrification, I think it would be a very wise move to make sure everyone's armor has at least some kind of petrification protection. Otherwise you are doing yourself a huge disservice. So, in form number 1, there's a 33% chance of it using Jecht Beam, and there's 66% chance of it using that regular attack that I will call that it does with its hand, or whatever. So this regular attack causes a slight delay on that character, so that's a little bit annoying, but there's not too much you can do about it. So the good thing here is that while it's in this form, it doesn't have any attacks that can take out the entire party in one go. So you're pretty much going to be safe. There's going to be no way that's going to wipe out everyone in one go. But this is probably also a good time to start preparing your characters. The best way to get through this battle, I think, would be a situation in which none of your characters actually die. Now, to ensure this, we want to put on as many buffs as possible. So, again, like I said, you should be able to get all of the items that you would need. So things like light curtains, lunar curtains, even things like stamina tablets, stamina tonics, these should all be easy to come by. You should have access to most of Riku's mixes, all of that good stuff. So I would try to make sure that everybody had stuff like double HP, everyone had Protect, everyone had Shell. You used a mix like Ultra Null so that you had the 5 times Cheer, 5 times Focus as well. You can even go crazy and use stuff that will increase your overdrive more quickly. So mixes that will double your overdrive speed, that kind of thing. So the more that you do of this, the greater chance you're going to have of surviving all of Braska's final Aeon's attacks. So what kind of numbers are we talking about here? the most damaging attack that Braskus Fine Leon is going to have at the early stages is going to be Triumphant Grasp. Now this is going to hit for no more than about 4000 HP. So even if your lowest character is hovering around the 2000 HP mark, if you can give them a stamina tonic type thing, couple that with the 5x cheer, then you're really going to be helping yourself out. And that would mean that pretty much all of your characters can survive all of the attacks. And especially in this first form, while he doesn't have that many devastating attacks, it's a very good time to get yourself set up in this way. So just be patient, take whatever time is needed, and make sure you get yourself set up in this way for the first part, because you are going to thank me when you get to the later bits. In terms of weaknesses, what is Braskus Fine Leon susceptible to? It's a bit of a game of two halves here, because he's susceptible to things like poison, he's susceptible to zombie, he's susceptible to the breaks as well, but the problem here is the Yew Pagodas by either side. Now, these Yew Pagodas, they get turns pretty frequently, and every time they get a turn they're going to be using Power Wave. So provided they're both alive at the same time, they're going to use Power Wave. And not only does Power Wave heal Braskus Fine Leon for 1500 HP, it will also cure him of all of his negative status ailments as well. So trying to beat this guy with negative status ailments is a losing battle. What I would recommend is if you have a weapon that maybe has counter attack and zombie strike on it, it's never a bad idea to give that to someone like Auron, Wakka and or Tidus. So with these guys you might be able to land a few extra hits. Zombification will help because at least the first Power Wave will take away 1500 HP. So instead of one round of Power Waves healing him for 3000, there'll be a net change in HP of 0. So Zombie is really the only one that would make any kind of difference to your life. So if possible, do try to include Zombie in your weaponry. So I know what you're thinking, you're going to say, oh wait a minute, Zombie, doesn't that mean Phoenix Downs and we can do all this crazy damage? Well, unfortunately not. Zombie is still kind of beneficial in this sense because you can use something like Curaga with Yuna, but in terms of healing items, the most damaging one you can use is a Mega Potion, because Braskus Fine Leon is immune to proportional damage, so things like Phoenix Downs and X Potions will not work on him. So unfortunately you can't use Zombie for huge damage, but that doesn't mean it's ineffective. So as for the Yew Pagodas themselves, should we kill them, should we not? Well, it's totally up to you, but I will give my advice on the matter. Yew Pagodas are very annoying because not only do they have 5000 HP to start with, but every time you kill them, they will come back with more and more HP every time, so they get increasingly more difficult to kill each time. So let's say you did 5000 damage the first time, and then the second time you did 7000 damage, then the second time they come back with 7000 HP, and it's going to get progressively more and more and more difficult. And once you get near the end of the battle, when Jecht is at his most dangerous, the Yew Pagodas are going to be at their hardest to kill as well. So is it really a wise idea to kill the Yew Pagodas? I don't think so. What I personally do is I always just slow them down. So I inflict Slowga, and once they're slowed as well, then that minimizes the impact they have on the battle. They're still very annoying, but I always find that preferable to having to kill them constantly over and over again. And even though there are situations in which killing them is probably going to help, like having one of them knocked out, at least you're not going to see Power Wave and that kind of thing, I would still say don't really do it for the first form. Just wait until you get to really near the end of the battle, where Jecht is at his most dangerous. Okay, so I've told you what you can do to maximize your chances of survival against this guy, but how are we actually going to get through this boss battle? So, phase 1, like I said, Jecht Beam 33%, 66% the regular attack, and every time there's a full overdrive you can get hit with Triumphant Grasp. So, for Triumphant Grasp, always keep out your highest HP people. So, let's say you've got people with, let's say you've double HP'd everyone. Some people are closer to 6,000-7,000 mark, some people are closer to the 3,500-4,000 mark. If there's anyone in that 3,500 to 4,000, get them out of there. Don't keep them in the danger zone. Just leave your highest HP people whenever there's an overdrive happening. So while you do this, continue to chip away at his damage, but don't use all of your big guns yet. Don't start firing off all your crazy overdrives. Don't use your Aeon overdrives. I would recommend you save that until later on, because we're really going to need them once we get to the end of this battle. So after you take out the first 60,000 HP, that's when things are going to start to get more interesting. Braskus Fine Leon is going to pull a giant sword out of his chest and hit you with a sword swipe attack that's going to really surprise you the first time you see it. So sword swipe is nasty for multiple reasons. One, it does quite a bit of damage, but again, if you have the preparations that I mentioned before, that will really cut it down to size. 2, it hits you with a delay again, but 3, it hits everyone. So all of your characters get delayed here. So Sword Swipe is pretty nasty. So that's how you're going to open up the second form. Now for the second form, for the first 60,000, because he's got 120,000 in total left now. For the first 60,000, Jet Beam is a 20% chance, Sword Swipe is a 20% chance luckily, and his regular attack is a 60% chance. So hopefully you're not going to be seeing Sword Swipe too much for this first 60,000. If you are, you're just being unlucky. But once again, if you have those preparations in place, maybe as an extra precaution you can use stuff like Sentinel and Defending. So if Auron has a Sentinel ability, he's going to take even less damage from physical attacks, and he's also going to get an extra counter attack. So the Sentinel ability will be very useful to you in this battle if you have it available. So yeah, just make sure that you're healing frequently. Don't be scared to use, stuff like Mega Potions if Riku or any other people that you want to use have the Alchemy ability. Alchemy is also going to be useful because you can get Mega Potions to heal for 4,000 at a time, which is very nice. Albed Potions will heal for 2,000 at a time. So just don't be afraid to use up all of the items. You're not going to need them for anything beyond this, so just go nuts. Heal as needed, try to do as much damage as you can, try to keep him zombified, and still let him have his overdrives. So Triumphant Grasp, the same deal. His overdrive is going to be the same for now. If you have anyone with low HP, anyone that's within risk of dying, swap them out. But anyone with above 4,500 HP, they're almost certain to be safe, so just keep them out there and they should be fine. Now, the real drama begins once he comes to his final 60,000 HP, and this is the bit that's going to get most people here. Because now, everything changes. So here's what's going to happen. There's a 33% chance of him using Jet Beam, which is higher than it was before, and it's his weakest attack, since we're all protected against petrification, so that's great news, right? Wrong, because Sword Swipe now goes up to 66%, which is really nasty. And to make matters even worse, he now has an overdrive called Ultimate Jet Shot, which is going to do pretty big damage to everyone. Again, with the things that I've told you, with all of the protection that I've mentioned, it shouldn't do more than 3,000 or 4,000 HP damage. So we should be okay. But if your character's a lower level, or you don't have those kind of preparations, it could hit everyone for such big damage that you will die. So what can we do about these big time moves coming up at the end of this battle? So now we have some tricks up our sleeves. The first and most important trick that we've been saving up until the end of the battle is Tidus's Talk ability here. So Tidus has the trigger command Talk, and I'm pretty sure you've all tried it. What Talk does is to bring Braskus Fine Leon's overdrive gauge back to 1%. So from this point onwards, because we do not want to see that Ultimate Jet Shot, as cool as it looks, if your main goal is winning, you do not want to see it. Every time he has a full overdrive gauge, you have to engineer a situation where Tidus will come in and use Talk before Braskus Fine Leon can unleash that overdrive. And lucky for us, the game will give us that ability twice. So that means that once he's below 60,000 HP, that's 2 occasions in which you can stop him from using his big overdrive, and that's going to be extremely helpful to us. As an extra bonus thing, one thing I could say is very early on in the battle is perhaps do enough damage to the Yu Pagodas that they're very, very close to death, but don't kill them, so do like 4,900 damage. And then when you're in this final stage and you really want to slow down Braskus Fine Leon with his overdrives, then you can like toss a grenade once he's under 60,000 HP, and you can stop the Yu Pagodas for a few turns just to buy yourself that little bit of extra time. And maybe if you feel like it, then you can start unleashing those overdrives that you've been saving up. So those character overdrives, if you really, really must, then you can use those Aeon overdrives, and by doing those you'll be able to kill the Yu Pagodas again. So by the time you're below 60,000, you'll have 2 Talks in your pocket to stop him from using his overdrive. You'll be able to stop the Yu Pagodas as well by using your own overdrives, and hopefully you should be able to do that final 60,000 damage before he's able to wipe you out with his big time overdrive and his more frequent sword swipe attacks. So that's all I've got for you guys. Hopefully that's been enough to help you defeat Braskus Fine Leon, and I hope that this video has been helpful in helping you to defeat these storyline bosses. If anything I said has been unclear, if there's anything you're still stuck on, then I'm definitely happy to help you guys in the comments. If you have any better suggestions, I mean my ones have just been more kind of general tips and tricks. Don't take this as like this is the perfect way to do every single boss, but these are just things that I think will help pretty much any regular player be able to defeat the bosses in this game and make it through to the end without tearing their hair out over some of the bosses in this game. So thank you all for watching. I hope it's been helpful. I hope to see you again soon with another video. Take care.